As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB helps shape South Dakota's future by educating, informing, and inspiring the next generation of thinkers, leaders, and creators. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder.
Good morning and welcome to Senate Education. Greeting to all our internet listeners. I would remind everyone to turn their cell phones to vibrate or silent. If you plan on testifying today, please sign in at sdlegislature.gov, or you can do this directly on your phone by scanning the QR code on the agenda above the podium. This time I'd ask the Secretary to call the roll.
Senators Marty?
Here.
Nelson? Here. Peterson excused. Sauter?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
Voigt?
Here.
Shanefish?
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
This time I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Senator Voigt, seconded by Senator Smith. Comments on the motion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion carries. I would remind all testifiers to sign in and make sure all lobbyists testifying on behalf of someone are wearing the appropriate badges. Please distribute all handouts through the pages, or I know they're at breakfast now, or we'll distribute through. We'll get them passed out some way or another. At this time, any personal privileges from anyone on the committee?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This time I'd like to introduce everybody to my wife, Kirsten Smith, in the back row. She's here today, wearing red glasses and a red on there. Welcome, Kirsten.
Welcome. We appreciate you being here, and thank you for sharing your husband with us.
Mr. Chairman. personal
Senator.
privilege.
Yes, Senator Marty.
I'd like to introduce my niece, Mary Jo Fairhead. She's Liz May's daughter. And I will be voting yes today.
Well, thank you for sharing your uncle with us and for telling him how to vote. So, anymore, we might as well have all the members do one today, right? All right. Well, seeing none, since pages aren't here, we won't have them introduce themselves quite yet. Just a reminder to direct all testimony questions through the chair. And with that, we will start on our agenda for the day. First up is House Bill 1003. An act to amend provisions pertaining to the required criminal background investigation of certain school employees. Proponent testimony. Welcome, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you very much, Chairman Shanefish, members of the committee. My name is Joe Graves, Secretary of Education for the state of South Dakota. The bill before you came about as a confluence of two things. First, our legal office came to the realization that we actually lacked the authority to require criminal background checks of private accredited schools. So we had the public, but we didn't have the private, though we had been enforcing that for many years, actually since 2000 when the criminal background checks first came in. And second, we had an inquiry from a private accredited school on the issue, so thought we needed to get this squared away. Because we strongly believe that criminal background checks are an important tool in keeping children in school safe from predators, we're asking that current law requiring such checks for all public school employees be legally extended to private accredited schools. Currently, all private accredited schools are, in fact, requiring criminal background checks for all employees, so little will change in actual practice. But ensuring the requirement is enshrined in law guarantees that it remains in practice and that the DOE can verify that these schools are continuing to do so when we conduct our accreditation reviews. Criminal background checks are not the total solution, but they are one rock in the school safety edifice. So please give this bill your approval in order to continue this current important practice at our private accredited schools, and I will, of course, stand by for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further proponent testimony on 1003? Any more proponent testimony? Seeing none, is there any opponent testimony? Seeing none, there's no need for a rebuttal. We'll move into committee questions. Any questions from the committee? Any? Okay, then we'll move into committee discussion and/or action.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Smith.
I move to pass.
Motion by Senator Smith, seconded by Senator Nelson. Comments on the motion?
I think it was explained really well, and it helps the accreditation process and helps provide safety for our students. So I think it makes sense, and I think we should all vote yes.
Yeah, thank you. Any further comments from the committee? All right, the motion is due pass on 1003. With that, the secretary will call the roll.
Senators Marty?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
Peterson excused. Sauter?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Voigt?
Aye.
Shanefish?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, 6 yea, 1 excused.
Motion carries. If there's no objection, we'll certify that for the consent calendar. All right, it is certified. With that, we will move into the next bill on our agenda, Senate Bill 218, an act to provide for the establishment of charter schools. We'll have allow 25 minutes for each side, and that welcome Senator. Proponent testimony on Senate Bill 218.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, committee members. Lauren Nelson, State Senator, District 18. First thing I'd like to do is move an amendment to 18A.
Motion by Senator Smith, seconded by Senator Marty. Comments on the motion?
I'd like the bill to be in the form that the senator wants the bill to be in.
All right. With that, those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. And those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Senate Bill 218 is amended, and we will start proponent testimony.
Thank you very much. Fellow committee members, I am pleased to present SB 218A, legislation that would establish charter schools in South Dakota. I support expanding school options for families. Public charter schools, being public and tuition-free, are accessible to everyone and are committed to delivering results. Like many parents in South Dakota, I believe that offering more choices to helps develop stronger students and opens up more opportunities for them. For 30 years, public charter schools have been an important part of America's public education system. South Dakota is one of only 3 states without a public charter school law. Such a law would support students, empower communities, and strengthen public education across South Dakota. There are 3 reasons I am most excited about bringing public charter schools to our great state. First, public charter schools support students with the greatest needs. Public charter schools offer innovative models that expand learning opportunities and improve outcomes across public education. Possible models include classical education, career and technical education, dropout recovery, language immersion, and schools for students with specific disabilities such as autism and dyslexia. Second, public charter schools enable communities to open schools aligned with local priorities. In South Dakota, school options should reflect community needs, such as Native American language culture or career pathways. This bill ensures that charter schools are community-driven by requiring applicants to show support and demand before approval. Third, public charter schools outperform traditional public schools, with research showing improved outcomes for all public school students. Holding them accountable raises expectations, promotes innovation, and boosts student success across all public education settings. I'll let our first testifier provide a more detailed summary of the bill, but I urge my colleagues to support Senate Bill 218A. We must improve outcomes for all students, and public charter schools are a proven model that expand options for families and strengthen public schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Further proponent testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Education Committee, for the opportunity to speak in favor of Senate Bill 218. I would especially like to thank Senator Nelson for her passion and leadership in bringing forward this important legislation. My name is Charlie Bufalino, and I work with the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools. For over 20 years, we have worked to advance policy supporting high-quality charter schools. We've helped to establish charter school laws in multiple states, including the passage of charter school legislation in North Dakota this past year. Our work to bring public charter schools to South Dakota goes back many years. Most recently, over the course of the last 2 years, we've engaged local partners and met with parents and community members across the state, several of which you'll hear from today, to work to understand how charter schools could meet the needs of South Dakota families. The legislation before this committee is not some off-the-shelf model law, but rather it has been designed and refined to specifically meet the needs of South Dakotans due to the collaboration and input of our local partners. I would like to briefly summarize for the committee the main components of the legislation. First, the bill defines charter school as a public school operated by a nonprofit organization through a performance contract with an authorizer. Charter schools must be tuition-free and open to all students. Under the legislation, local school boards in the South Dakota Department of Education will be allowed to authorize charter schools through a rigorous application process. The bill details that an application to open a charter school must include detailed plans for academics, operations, and finances, as well as to show proof of community support for the school. Priority consideration is given to applicants seeking to serve students within a tribal reservation and may be given to an applicant intending to serve low-income, special education, or English learners. This rigorous application process will ensure that only high-quality charter schools are allowed to open. The Department of Education is tasked with promulgating rules, as well as developing application templates, timelines, and evaluation rubrics. Under SB 218, the bill specifies that charter schools must comply with academic standards, assessments, special education requirements, and laws protecting the rights and safety of students. Charter schools are exempt from many additional education laws governing traditional public schools. This gives charter schools the flexibility to design innovative education models with complete autonomy over staffing, curriculum, support services, and other aspects of the learning environment. Critically, the legislation establishes robust accountability for all charter schools. Even after the front-end accountability of a robust, rigorous application process, approved charter schools will be given an initial performance contract of 5 years. The contract must include an evaluation framework with performance indicators for student proficiency and growth, achievement gaps between student subgroups, attendance, post-secondary readiness, mission-specific goals, and financial performance and sustainability. Charter schools must meet these requirements and apply to be renewed every 5 years. Authorizers may close a charter school at any time for underperformance. Admission to a charter school must be open to all students, subject only to capacity. If the number of applicants exceeds the school's capacity, the charter school shall provide enrollment preference for at-risk student subgroups, siblings of currently enrolled students, and any remaining spots will be filled by a public random lottery. As public schools, charter schools may not consider academic status, gender, income, race, religion, or special education status when granting admission. Under Senate Bill 218, charter schools would be funded in the same manner as traditional public schools, receiving roughly the same per pupil funding. Funds would follow the student to the public school they choose to attend. This legislation is designed to complement the work going on in traditional South Dakota public schools and to strengthen public education as a whole by increasing both innovation and accountability. I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee might have, and I urge each of you to vote yes on Senate Bill 218. Thank you.
Thank you. More proponent testimony.
Good morning. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Mary Jo Fairhead, and I'm here speaking on my own behalf. I'm the founder of Onward Learning, a nationally awarded innovative private school located in Bennett County near the Pine Ridge Reservation. I come before you today asking for your support of SB 218. I've spent much of my life serving as an educator, first as a teacher, then as a principal, and now as a school founder. I grew up in Kyle, South Dakota, on the Pine Ridge Reservation, and as many of you know, our area faces significant challenges and some of the lowest academic outcomes in the state. But it is also one of the most beautiful places on earth, and I continue to see incredible potential in our children. I returned home to teach nearly 12 years ago, full of ambition and a deep desire to give back. During my time as a teacher and principal, I encountered many difficult realities. The most challenging was standing in a classroom full of students knowing I could not possibly meet the state's requirements and the individual needs of each of my children. I had students coming to school hungry, exhausted, and neglected. I had children with learning differences and complex trauma histories. Yet, I was expected to teach with fidelity, using the same curriculum and pacing for every student. I had children who were as many as 4 grade levels behind, but I was expected to teach them at grade level because that's where they would be tested. I remember thinking very clearly, every single one of my students needed an individualized learning plan. As a principal, I worked hard to create better conditions. We kept class sizes manageable. We empowered teachers to adapt instruction. We invested in mental health supports and partnered with outside organizations. We saw gains, but it was still not enough. I vividly remember coming home one day after a child at my school had tried to take her own life, and I saved her life. I'd spent the day at the hospital, and I remember driving home thinking, is this what our soldiers feel like when they come home from war? We simply didn't have the staffing, training, or facilities needed to fully support students with certain academic or mental health needs, nor did we have anywhere to refer those students when their needs exceeded our capacity. I'd worked alongside some of the most passionate and dedicated educators imaginable, yet they were stretched to their mental and physical limits by the pressures placed upon them and the emotional weight of serving students with complex academic and emotional needs. When the pandemic hit, this was all magnified. That's when I decided to start a school designed to serve the students I had spent years worrying about. Students I knew were capable, but needed a different environment to succeed. I wanted to help, and even if that meant serving only a handful of students at first, I knew it was a start. Today, I'm asking you to support public charter schools in South Dakota because I truly believe they are a critical piece of the puzzle in supporting our public schools, our educators, and most importantly, our children. Public charter schools are not a replacement for our current public schools. They are a strategy, one tool among many to expand options and meet unmet needs. They allow mission-driven educators to partner with the public system in innovative ways while still remaining accountable for results. If this bill becomes law, South Dakota will be one of the last states in the nation to adopt public charter schools. The good news is, though, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are successful models across the country doing incredible work. I have friends in Ohio at Bridgeway Academy and the Arizona Autism Charter Schools who are proving that neurodivergent learners don't just cope, they thrive when schools are intentionally designed for them. At Oakmont Education, students are being served who had previously dropped out of high school. They're earning diplomas, industry-recognized credentials, and participating in work-based learning that connects them to jobs right within their community and beyond. While I don't know whether Onward Learning would seek charter accreditation if this bill becomes law, I do know that my eyes have been opened in the last few years of what could be possible if this opportunity were opened up to the kids in the state. And that's why I hope you'll vote yes on SB 218. And in closing, as my friend Chris from Oakmont Education says, when states empower people and organizations to meet kids where they are, everyone wins. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you. For the proponent testimony, we're 11 minutes and 20 seconds in.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Mandy Cheddar, and I'm speaking on my behalf. I'm a proud mother of 4 children. I'm from Rapid City, and like many parents across South Dakota, my husband and I believe deeply in public schools and ensuring that our children receive the best opportunities to learn and grow. Our older children have thrived in the public schools and are now succeeding in college and in middle school. But today I'm here because of my youngest son, Kai. From a very young age, Kai showed exceptional academic ability. He began reading at the age of 2, and by the age of 4, he passed the first grade standards during an evaluation conducted by our local elementary school. Ultimately, we skipped kindergarten and began him in first grade. Kai is now 7, and he's in the 3rd grade, and despite everyone's best efforts, his daily school experience highlights a serious gap in our current system. Because Kai finishes his assignments quickly, he often spends large portions of the school day with nothing left to learn. Many days, once his work is complete, he's placed on a computer simply to stay occupied. Technology is not a substitute for meaningful education and instruction. He needs to be challenged. Last year, when Kai was in 2nd grade, the lack of opportunity became even clearer to us. Due to the amount of extra time he had during the school day, he completed the entire 4th grade online math program. This was simply because he had nothing else to do, so they sat him at a computer. While this may sound impressive, it raises a serious concern. If a 2nd grader can finish 2 years of advanced material simply because he has nothing else to do, the system just isn't serving him well. When we ask what options are available to better meet Kai's needs, the only thing we've been offered is another grade skip, which we will not entertain. I do not want to rush Kai through his childhood or push him through his education faster simply because there's no flexibility within the system for him. Academic advancement alone does not meet the social, emotional, and developmental needs of a 7-year-old child. Skipping another grade would not solve the real issue. What Kai needs is to be challenged appropriately. Families like mine need more flexibility within our public education so that children can be challenged without sacrificing their childhood. A public charter school would allow Kai to remain in public education while receiving a more individualized, meaningful learning experience. I strongly support public charter schools in South Dakota because students like Kai currently have very limited options. He deserves more than screen time and waiting. He deserves to be engaged, challenged, and inspired every day that he's in school. And Kai is not alone. For Kai and South Dakota children like him, I ask you to please vote yes on SB 218. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the proponent testimony.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, my name is Janelle McCracken, and I'm speaking on my own behalf. I live in Belfouche, South Dakota. I'm here today in support of the Senate Bill 218. I have always been a public school teacher. I love public schools. I've taught for 16 years in Alaska and South Dakota. I currently teach 4th grade in my community. In 1996, I was a co-founder of the first charter school in Alaska, created after parents and teachers saw additional public school options. 4 public school teachers came together to design and open an alternative public school in our district. This is our original charter, which has since been renewed every 10 years. For 30 years, Chinook Montessori Charter School has been serving students and is accepted with pride by the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District as a fantastic public charter school. It is a free public school, open to all students. The school started with 75 students, grew to 150, and continues to have a waiting list. There is a high level of accountability for teachers, parents, students, and the school itself. At Chinook, all students have an individualized education plan, and the school attracts both students who might struggle in a traditional setting and those who need more of a challenge. Chinook uses a Montessori model, which emphasizes self-discipline, hands-on learning, and multi-age classrooms. Students remain with the same teacher for 2 to 3 years and advance based on demonstrated readiness rather than traditional grade levels. The multi-age setting allows for student leadership and cooperative learning. To graduate 8th grade from the school, students complete a week-long apprenticeship in the community. Parents are true partners in the school and contribute in many ways, both inside and outside the school. Over 3 decades, charter schools in Alaska have shown strong academic performance and continued demand from families. Now I'm a teacher in a traditional school again, and I see families seeking alternative outside the public school system when they cannot find what they need. At the beginning of this school year, our district lost a teacher in every grade level, K through 4, because of the drop in enrollment. This is happening all over the state, and it demonstrates that families are eager for educational alternatives that meet the needs of their children. There are many reluctant homeschool families. In my experience, having public charter school options strengthens our public school system by giving families a reason to stay. While there are great challenges to opening and running a public charter school, the effort leads to innovative options for students in communities. I encourage you to support charter school legislations for South Dakota, which will lead to more public options for students and families. It will also provide opportunities for excellent public school teachers to come together and create innovative models in their communities. I've seen what public charter schools have done in Alaska, and I know it can do the same in South Dakota. I urge you to vote yes on Senate Bill 218.
Thank you. 18 minutes in.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of committee. My name is Fran Appland, and I'm speaking on my own behalf. I live in Rapid City, and my background in education was shaped by my husband's 30 years in military service. As a military spouse, I rebuilt my career many times while raising our 3 sons. I've worked in education from preschool through adult education and supported military-connected families at Ellsworth Air Force Base. Although we've lived in many places, South Dakota has always been my home. My great-great-grandfather, C.S. Amston, served as a territorial superintendent and later spent 25 years split between the House and the Senate in the South Dakota legislature. My family's belief in education and public service runs deep, and my husband and I chose to retire here. As an educator, I have seen remarkable transformation. I have watched students move from fear, withdrawal, and quiet struggle to belonging, aspiration, and joy. This happens when they're in the environment that they're most comfortable in. I've seen a moment that a child realizes that they matter, that they're capable, and that learning is something that they truly do love. When students feel safe, valued, and they don't just improve academically, they begin to thrive, and that transformation changes their trajectory, as you've already heard from other testimonies. Charter schools align with conservative principles, with fiscal discipline, prioritizing accountability, and local control while expanding opportunities for families. Students learn differently and have diverse interests and goals. While traditional public schools serve many students well, others benefit from additional public education options. Charter schools have earned national Blue Ribbon recognition, demonstrated both high achievement and success in closing achievement gaps, enacting legislation with clear performance contracts, regular academic, and financial audits and closure of schools that fail to meet the standards create an approach that emphasizes accountability, efficiency, and return on taxpayer investment. Charter schools are not a replacement for public education, but a locally driven tool that supports innovation, workforce readiness, and parent involvement while respecting fiscal responsibility. Thank you for your time and service to South Dakota students.
Thank you. More proponent testimony.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Andrew Hayes and I'm from Rapid City, South Dakota, and I'm speaking on my own behalf. I'm the parent of 2 school-aged children, and I've also worked as an elementary educator for over 15 years. I currently teach 3rd grade, and I left excellent subplans this morning. As a parent, my support for charter school legislation is deeply personal. Like all parents, I want my children to feel safe, challenged, and inspired at school. I want them to be seen as individuals and not just as test scores or seat numbers. Having access to additional public school options would allow families like mine to find an environment that fits their child's strengths and needs while remaining within the public education system. And as an educator, I've seen many students succeed in alternative environments who struggled mightily in typical sit and get classrooms. Charter schools give educators the freedom to design programs that respond directly to students' needs, whether that means smaller class sizes, specialized curricula, extended learning time, or new instructional approaches. In my professional experience, this autonomy often leads to creative solutions that would be difficult or impossible under more rigid systems, while still holding schools accountable for results. Charter schools offer families one more public option, and for parents like me, that matters. I respectfully ask you to support SB 218. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another minute and a half or so for in-room testimony before we go to online. So if you'd like to come up.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Beving. I'm a registered lobbyist with Americans for Prosperity. I think the previous testifiers have made the points pretty succinctly. The only thing that I would add, I also am a homeschool parent and run a homeschooling organization that has about 5,000 members. And when we poll these members, if homeschooling is their first choice, a lot of times, many of them say it's not. It is sort of the last resort after the public school has not worked for them. And so I believe that increasing the options in public schools would capture some of these students. We want homeschooling to be the choice, the first choice, not the last resort. Public charter schools would give students who are struggling or who are looking for something different another path, and yet they could still stay in the public school system. So we would urge a yes on this bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you. About a minute for any more in-room testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tara Larson. I'm an attorney here in Pierre and registered lobbyist for Yes Every Kid. The online testifier is far more important than me, so me too.
All right, thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Representative Tessa Schwans from District 9 near Sioux Falls in Hartford, South Dakota. I'm a Me Too.
All right, thank you, Representative. All right, seeing no farther in-room testimony, we will have a minute and a half for our online testifier. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is William Corbin. Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you. Maybe talk a little louder, though, if you can.
Okay. Hello, my name is William Corbin. I'm an attorney from South Carolina, and I'm here to speak in favor of South Dakota adopting charter schools. I went to a charter school in South Carolina that was sponsored by my local technical college. It was a lottery-based entry, and they worked great with my brother and I, who both have autism. We had lower funding and resources, but we had, the worst portables, but some of the best outcomes in the state. Other than the environment, I love that GMC kept me intellectually challenged. By the time I graduated, I earned almost 2 years of transferable college credit completely for free. and it helped me prepare me for college. I knew what a syllabus was. I knew how final exams worked. I was working towards my future while in high school. And a little bit about my background, I was salutatorian in high school, and then my senior project led me to a college internship, which I loved a lot, covering Clemson football. I graduated Clemson with 2 degrees and a 3.9 GPA. I had a top 2% in my law school admissions test, so I got a full ride and stipend to UGA Law. I say that not to talk about me, but to talk about that I don't know if that would be possible if it wasn't for the experience that I got at my charter school in high school, taking college classes in a small environment and keeping me intellectually challenged. I know I'm short on time, so I just want to say that I had a great experience at a charter school, and I think the South Dakota kids should have the same opportunity.
All right, thank you. That we will close the proponent testimony and move into opponent testimony. Opponent testimony on Senate Bill 218.
Morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Senate Education Committee. I'm Diana Miller, registered lobbyist for the Large School Group, and I'm going to take you through the actual some sections of the bill, but I want to start with 4 major premises, and then I will turn it over to some of the other testifiers against this bill to talk about specific sections. First of all, there are 4 major reasons we oppose the Senate Bill 218, because number 1, you have issues around giving a department confusion around whether you have the authorizing agency as a school board or the Department of Education or another nonprofit agency. So the rules are different for everybody and who's running the school board. So the authorizing entity seems to be a little fuzzy as to what they can do and how they can do it versus a school board. I think the definition of a public charter school is unique, what they're calling a public. And I think the reason it fits into that public category is Section 27 because of the funding. And you're taking money away from a public school. I don't see many other sections of this bill dealing with public issues because we have standards to meet. They make sure that they are exempt from state standards. They are exempt from state rules governing public education. So I believe calling it a public charter school is a stretch. Number 2, and then I would also mention, do you really want the Department of Education to be an authorizing agency when they're a regulatory agency, not an authorizing agency to run a school? They are not a school board. Number 2, it's unconstitutional. Article 8, Section 1 of the Constitution says you shall have a uniform system of schools. And this doesn't qualify because it's completely outside the box. And I understand some of the emotional testimony, but it currently can be done, and I'm going to prove that within our system. Article 9, Section 2, why it's unconstitutional, you're using taxpayer dollars for public purposes because charter schools are non-public. And you can also look at Section 21. The collateral, they can lease, purchase buildings, do a number of things. I don't know where the collateral is for this. You can't just go out. You have to have some backing if you're going to go to a bank and purchase a building unless it's all going to be donated. And I have concerns about Section 21. Section 25, they want to belong to the state retirement system. So you're mixing and mingling a lot of things in this particular bill. And who makes the contribution, who does the match, that type of thing in the state retirement system. Is that even legal? The charter school sets up its own governance. So you might have 2 boards running a school with a conflict. You have if you put it under a regular school board or if you have a nonprofit governing board. Then you also have to decide, are you exempt from all state laws or just part of the state laws? And that's my confusion. Who is responsible for the financial audit and compliance? It says that the local school board. Who pays for that? Under what circumstances is the financial audit? We have to all be audited, and compliance statutes we need to meet. And fourthly, I would say that it can currently be done in our system without disrupting the entire system. In fact, we have one of these schools, the Emerson School in Sioux Falls, and it was done within the confines of the public school under the same regulations. Section 7, lines 8 through 13, I want to know how we measure accountability. Specific, if they're taking the state tests, they only say they report them. How do you compare them and fit in with the public? And that's also in Section 13. Section 8, I don't really understand what Section 8 is. They talk about the Department of Education if they're the authorizing agency. Section 22 is really bothersome. They have 75% of the teachers can only have to be certified. What about the other 25%? I have a concern about that. And when you use public money to support public schools, or excuse me, a charter school, you're taking away from public education. And currently we're in a battle to fund public education, and we're at zero. So you're going to take more money and draw from the students, and there's no assurance that the services will be comparable. None whatsoever. So I think this is confusing, and it's convoluted. And I would also point out they stated the success of public schools with a quick Google search on my part. 7 have closed within the last year. 1 in California, 1 in Florida, 2 in North Carolina, 1 in Pennsylvania, and 1 in Maryland. And the reason they closed, for 4 reasons: financial, low enrollment, poor performance on standards and assessments, and compliance issues. This is an issue we've seen in South Dakota before, and it's been rejected because you have plenty of choices in South Dakota. And we support the choices that are here, except for one. You have public education, you have private, you have non-accredited private, you have homeschool, alternative education, you have micro schools, and now you have a bill on the floor of the Senate for non-public. That's the one I probably wouldn't support. But the fact of the matter is, when you could already do this in our state, why introduce a whole new concept that isn't really public? So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would ask that you defeat Senate Bill 218 to the 41st legislative day. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We are 6.5 minutes in.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Rob Munson, Executive Director for School Administrators of South Dakota. On behalf of our school administrators, I rise in opposition of this bill. Let me begin by saying clearly, our administrators support innovation, flexibility, and improving student outcomes for all students. Every day, principals and superintendents work to implement new programs, expand career pathways, strengthen literacy, and close achievement gaps. Innovation is not the concern. The structure, fiscal impact, governance framework, and long-term consequences of this proposal are. Referring to Section 11 that Ms. Miller touched on a little bit, this section speaks to the Department of Education being the authorizing entity of a charter school. I don't think a government agency should be overseeing anything in a school district unless that district is in violation of something or on some level of probation. Our next concerns are again with Section 22. Ms. Miller spoke to this. Why would we ever want to have less educated teachers in front of our students? The other piece that concerns me about this is we have an accountability with educators that we have to meet, teacher pay. We have a starting salary. We have 97% of what comes into the school districts must be paid to teachers. If we are funneling money off of our per student allocation and sending it to additional teachers in there, this bill does not speak at all to how we are supposed to meet the accountability based on what's already in law. Nowhere in this bill does it say you get an exemption based on numbers of teachers in your district. This bill would certainly have an impact on all school districts, but mostly rural school districts. As you know, our student funding formula, our teacher salaries, everything is based on the number of bodies in the seats. You can talk about it being a teacher ratio all you want, but it is truly number of students in the seats. So if we start to siphon students off and send them to this charter school, it's going to have an impact on all schools, but it's certainly going to have an impact on rural schools more than larger schools. Finally, there is existing capacity for this innovation. Current law already allows districts to implement specialized programs, alternative schools, partnerships, and innovative instructional models within the existing accountability structure. If flexibility is the goal, the legislature could consider targeted regulatory relief or pilot innovation zones within the public system rather than creating, again, an entire separate system. We can promote innovation without fragmenting governance and funding. Ms. Miller gave one example. I will give you some more. Sonia Sotomayor in Sioux Falls is a wonderful charter opportunity for those students set up underneath the guise of the public school board. The CTE Center in Sioux Falls, again, another example. New Tech High School in Sioux Falls, another great example. And my favorite is All City Elementary in Sioux Falls. My question would be, the people who are proponents behind this bill, have any of them approached a school board and even had the discussion about whether or not they would support this in their school district? Public education works best when it's coherent, accountable, locally governed, and equitably funded. This bill creates structural inequities, fiscal uncertainty, and diminished local control while layering on new oversight, responsibilities for both districts and the Department of Education. Our administrators stand ready to work with the legislature on meaningful, responsible reforms that strengthen student outcomes without undermining the stability of our public schools. For these reasons, Mr. Chair, committee, we ask you to please urge a do not pass on this bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Further opponent testimony.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Heath Larson, Executive Director, Associated School Boards of South Dakota. I too rise in opposition of Senate Bill 218 today. And just a few thoughts. I don't want to reiterate too much of what you've already heard for the sake of time, but want to specifically speak to the mechanics of the bill and then put a little personal touch on the end of it at the conclusion. But Section 1 sets up a definition of a charter school and mentioned an independent governing board. That's problematic, as there's nothing in the bill that explains the independent board other than the application must describe it. So we have some significant concerns here on the governance side of things. Charter school is going to take governance and oversight away from the local board. You don't know how the charter school board is established. It would not be an elected board. They're publicly elected officials with our local governing boards of education in our public school. That's important to recognize. Loss of governance also means loss of control from an oversight and, most importantly, an accountability perspective. Let's look at Section 2. That exempts the charter school from state laws that regulate other than just the few that they put back in the bill. Well, why is that? Well, because a lot of times there are concerns when issues with accountability and transparency from an accountability perspective in most South Dakota laws. Let's look at Section 7. It was referenced earlier. Section 7 is an issue as well. It says the authorizing entity, as you heard the two previous opponents testify to, the local school board must approve if they meet the criteria. This is an issue because the charter school can argue the local board can't deny their application. So let's just, at the end of the day, this is not discretionary for a local school board to approve. If they do have discretion, it's very confusing in this section at a bare minimum. Look at Section 24. Lots of loopholes in here with student admission process. It says the charter school can admit if the applicant meets the mission of the school. That allows the charter school to handpick their students. Our local public schools, they take everyone. Section 27 specifically talks about funding and how that funding is taken away from our local public school dollar for dollar. That's Section 27. And last but not least, and it's been referenced before, if a local school wants to start a magnet school, an alternative instruction school, like many do now, we don't need charter school legislation to do this. This is just a way for a group to break off of the public school and set up their own school paid for by the public school. So I was a school superintendent for 11 years. We had a regional alternative high school that we ran, grades 9 through 12, and it was in person. We also had some online opportunities for it, but it was an in-person alternative school. This is a small school. You heard Sioux Falls referenced before with multiple opportunities in Sioux Falls. Great schools, great opportunities all under their local boards. In a small school, very small school, we had a regional alternative high school that offered great opportunities for students. We don't need the legislation that's brought forth in Senate Bill 218 to create innovative opportunities in this great state. Overall, our public schools are already allowed to do much of what is offered in this bill. I urge you to send this bill to the 41st day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Sandra Waltman with the South Dakota Education Association. Well, the previous opponents did a great job outlining some of the issues with the bill, section by section. We would just like to say we do believe in innovation, and we do believe that students deserve every opportunity. The challenge we have right now is there are not enough resources to go around. The bill does not discuss about how we are going to not only improve funding for public schools, but how are we going to pay for these schools in the long term. I think if you look at the opportunities school districts have as outlined by the previous opponents, they're called magnet schools. We would like to do more of those. However, the biggest obstacle is resources. Some may say that Senate Bill 218 is creating options, but reality, it creates a separate school system that takes money away from our public schools. And right now we face serious funding challenges. But under this bill, districts must forward that per student funding, the amount, which includes state aid and local tax dollars, to charter schools. But when students leave, districts still have their fixed costs. Buildings still need to be heated, buses still must run, and teachers and staff still must be paid, as Mr. Munson outlined earlier. This creates a funding gap that puts additional strain on already tight local budgets. We encourage innovation without breaking up how local control and taking away local control. Every dollar spent on a charter school can't go towards keeping teachers, special education, career technical classes, and mental health supports in our local public schools. For those reasons, we would ask you to defeat Senate Bill 218. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any more opponent testimony?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Senate Education Committee. My name is Derek Hills. I'm a registered lobbyist for the Sioux Falls School District. On behalf of the Sioux Falls School District, I will be rising in opposition of Senate Bill 218. As the bill is written, we have many concerns of how a charter school is defined, how such a school would be funded and regulated. First, it stated that a charter school is exempt from any state law or rule pertaining to a public school district, or the board of a school district. This is a vast blanket exception from state rules and would give charter schools almost no accountability for how law exists today. Currently at the local level, school boards can be and are held accountable for their communities. If a community has an issue, they can bring it up to their school board members, and if that school board fails to address these issues, that community then has the option to remove those members through an election. As this bill is written right now, that is not guaranteed for charter schools. Instead, this adds another layer of difficulty to resolving local issues and makes obtaining solutions that much more complex. Second, with the rulemaking authority that it does give, authority is almost entirely given to the Department of Education. Although we believe that the department likely would be capable, we cannot undermine how much work and time would actually be required for the department to make and enforce new rules for these charter schools. This would take up a big chunk of time and resources that should be used to focus on making our current public education system better. The public education system is where the vast majority of children in our state are and will continue to be educated at. This is not even taken into account if initial mistakes are made in formation and execution of new charter schools. Think about the probability of waste and funding to create new schools that are on a trial and error basis right away. If any of these new schools are to fail, that money is just gone. Money that was meant for public education, and we already see that every year it ends up being pretty tight anyways for education. Because of the broad blanket exemption from state rules this legislation creates, the overbroad grant of rulemaking authority to the Department of Ed, which will take a lot of work and resources for them to conduct. And finally, the drainage of resources this takes away from traditional public schools, which already face underfunding issues. The Sioux Falls School District would respectfully ask that you vote in opposition of Senate Bill 218. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more opponent testimony? Any more opponent testimony? All right. Seeing none, we will offer the prime sponsor or designated to give the rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to be brief to cover a couple points. Charter schools are public schools, full stop. This has existed in this country for over 30 years. They've been determined to be public schools. It's been litigated in the court. We should ask ourselves, what is it that makes a school public? There was some mention of confusion around the structure of the authorizers. I'll try to clear that up. The charter school would be governed by an independent board of directors like any other nonprofit. But that's not where it stops. That nonprofit enters into a performance contract if the application is approved with either a local school board of education or the State Department of Education. Ultimately, one of those two authorizers is responsible for the school meeting what has been outlined in the contract and making sure it is getting results for students and families. What happens in traditional public schools when there's underperformance? Is there massive reform? Are schools closed down? Those are the things that happen with public charter schools. We also heard a mention that one of the testifiers mentioned 7 schools were closed down last year. That's a feature of the charter school movement, not a bug. If a school is underperforming, they should not continue to have the privilege of serving students and families. And accountability is articulated in this bill. It is very clear in the bill that as part of the application process, a rigorous process has to be laid out. There was a question that was brought up about discretion in approving. All the language in the bill says that you can't introduce different components other than what is listed in statute in the application process and the evaluation rubrics that will be developed by the department that will be used uniformly across all authorizers. It was also mentioned that this will take an excessive amount of time from the department to work this out. We have spoke with the department. They've seen multiple versions of this bill text, and we worked with them on this language, and I'm grateful for their engagement because it's a better bill today than it was before we started working with them. I also want to touch upon a lot of the concerns that were brought up about what is this going to do to traditional public schools? What is it going to do to this system? Charter schools are locally driven. What more local control is there than at the kitchen table? If there is not demand in a community from families, a school is not going to open. This will not pop up in the middle of the night and a local community will have no say about it. The exact opposite. Authorizers can and should deny an application that does not show robust support for a school to open. This has existed for a long time. We have not seen public charter schools open and see massive amounts of closures of public schools, districts shutting down. If anything, we've over time seen more collaboration between the traditional public schools and public charter schools. We are part of public education. We see our role not only as to serve the families and students directly, but also to put a model forth that shows that when we can loosen up some of these regulations and we can have more innovation and we can empower local educators, parents, and a community to try something different, we can show a rising tide that lifts all boats. Charter schools do not solely outperform traditional public schools, and we do see that. The most comprehensive study in the nation shows that charter schools across the country on average outperform traditional public schools with 16 additional days of learning a year in reading and 6 additional days in math. When you break that down for low-income students, the number rises to 26 days of additional learning, and some schools in portions of the country are showing learning gains of 60, 70, or even 80 days plus of learning. But that's not where the story ends. We also have research that shows when public charter schools exist in a community, over time, it lifts the results of all public schools in that area. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to improve outcomes through public education. Charter schools are not a silver bullet that is going to solve all problems in public education in South Dakota, but it is a tool that has pushed public education to be better. And I heard a lot of great things from some of the opponent testimony about innovation already going on in the public system. That's great. South Dakota deserves a lot of credit for it. That should continue, and if options exist that are meeting the needs of families, you are not going to see a public charter school try to get started in that area. But there are other families who don't have that opportunity. We should give it to them. We should not be afraid of the unknown. This bill has been worked on by a lot of folks and local input in South Dakota. We heard from testifiers who want this option. There is strong accountability in this, and this is something that we really truly believe will help improve outcomes across the state. Thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, we will close the committee testimony and we will move on to committee questions. Questions from the committee. All right, I guess I'll start with one then. On the section where it references support from the community, how might that be measured?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That could be demonstrated a number of ways, and this is one of those areas that will be further specified in rulemaking from the Department of Education when they develop those evaluation rubrics. But I will give you a couple of examples that I would expect to see. Many times you'll see a proposed applicant host community forums where they're working within a community and they're showing folks who came and showed up. Sometimes it's a list of supporters. Sometimes it's bringing families who want the school to the public hearing that is required to take place in the legislation. And so there are several different ways to show it. And to speak to an earlier point, the authorizer will have discretion in determining, is this adequate community support or not? That community support must be demonstrated, but there is discretion in determining whether that has been met or not.
And as a follow-up, we're in section 7 where it says the authorizing entity must approve an application that meets the requirements. Is the community support reference a requirement that it has to use?
Yes, that is listed in section 5 under subsection 11.
All right, thank you. Other questions from the committee yet? Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I have several, and they might not be in any sort of order if I might have a little flexibility.
Yep, and just feel free to ask the questions. You can answer, and I mean, unless I stop you or anything, just to keep things running smoothly.
Okay.
Just go right
Thank you.
ahead.
So I think the first question is for Derek Hills, I think is the Sioux Falls school lobbyist. Thanks for being here. So my question is, we heard from a number of the opponents, and I think you were included in that you were all about innovation and creative options and working with the legislature to make sure we've got those in place. What I'm wondering is, with the objections that you raised to this particular bill, have you spoken with the legislator that is sponsoring the bill and talked to her about her objections and tried to work through those so that you could possibly support the bill?
Mr. Chair, Derek Hills, registered lobbyist for Sioux Falls School District. I personally have not, but we would be open to the communications if we can attempt to try to work something out that would make this workable in the future. But our main concern is just with the funding with this, and our position is that the this would just take away from the public funding throughout.
Mr. Chair, follow up. So what I hear you saying is no. You have not spoken with the sponsor of the bill.
Mr. Chair, I have not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask the same question of the representative from SDEA, please. Thanks for being here. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Sandra Waltman with the South Dakota Education Association. Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. So, again, the opponents have indicated an interest and a willingness to embrace innovative and creative ideas and work with the legislature to do so for public education. And so I'm wondering if you have personally spoken with the sponsor of the bill and talked to her about your concerns and objections and tried to work through those so that you might be able to come to some sort of agreement or compromise on public charter schools.
Mr. Chair. I have not personally spoken with the sponsor of the bill. I do know our executive director has had some conversations with some of the proponents about our concerns about the bill.
just a follow-up clarification. So you have not spoken with the sponsor, correct?
I personally have not spoken with the sponsor,
Okay.
no.
Thank you.
All right. Yep. Senator Voigt.
Follow up, if I could. Could I speak with the executive director from Associated School Boards? Thank you.
Chair.
Could you give me a sense of funding vehicles for public schools? At what point do they secure funding, and what is determined how much funding they're going to receive?
Mr. Chair, Heath Larson, Executive Director, Associated School Boards. Thanks for the question, Senator Voigt. From a public school funding perspective, it would be based off our funding formula, which is a ratio, but which is a derivative of student enrollment. Basically, then districts are given and told how many teachers in the formula they are allowed to or should have. So that's how the derivative of the formula works. But in a real clear, simple methodology, it's on a ratio basis built off of students from a student enrollment perspective and number of teachers.
Follow-up. It's my understanding that is basically driven on that fall enrollment. There's the date and time when that is submitted to the state for funding. Thank you.
Okay. Not sure if there was a question.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you.
Oh, yep, that's correct. Last Friday in September is the count date.
Senator Sauter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure who this is for, the sponsor or whoever can answer this. I'd appreciate the answer. In Section 2 in the amendment, Section 2, Number 3, it says to operate a physical structure where the school provides in-person academic instruction, all that. I'm kind of confused here because if a charter school is supposed to be part of the public school, but yet it's not part of the public school because it doesn't have the same administration, who pays for this physical structure?
Thank you for the question. Charlie Bufalino with the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools. I'll speak to the purpose of that in the amendment in a second, but to answer your question very directly, it's the responsibility of the charter school and its governing board to figure out how to pay for a facility. You see a lot of innovation in this area. You'll often see charter schools retrofit an existing building. I've seen a charter school that took over an abandoned mall and paid to retrofit it and make it suitable for school. That is something in the application in terms of a facility plan that needs to be included, and so the authorizer will have an ability to say whether that's an adequate plan or not. But there are no public resources that would go towards supporting them to find a facility. This is an area where other states have done things to proactively help charter schools secure facilities, but we don't know exactly what the facilities demands or challenges would look like in South Dakota necessarily. So for purposes of enabling legislation, it made sense to leave that a responsibility for the charter school operators themselves. And if you can't sort of find a building or a suitable physical space, that's a pretty good indicator to an authorizer that you shouldn't be approved. The reason that that language was added specifically was just to make it very clear and explicit in the bill that this would not allow for virtual or online charter schools. They would have to be brick and mortar.
Okay, maybe since we're on the topic of the facilities, just a question: any facilities owned by a charter school, would they pay any property taxes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. They would have to, whatever sort of the current law is sort of on a building, they would be required to follow that like another nonprofit would for occupying it. If there's exemptions for nonprofits to occupy a building, then they wouldn't have to, but they would follow the same rules for a nonprofit in terms of any taxes owed on a building.
Okay, thank you. Senator Smith.
Question as to extracurricular activities and things like that. If you're enrolled in the charter school, is that your attendance school, and you would no longer be eligible to be, let's say, if they don't have a basketball team, the charter school would have to have their own basketball team, I'm assuming?
That's an excellent question, Senator. Extracurriculars is not addressed specifically in the legislation. It is something that we would probably look at a future time, and many states with charter school laws have added specific language around extracurriculars. The way it tends to work in practice is that a charter school, because it is a school of choice, would need to provide extracurricular activities that its parents and families are asking for. And if for some reason a certain extracurricular wasn't present, they would likely work with the local school district to try to provide some sort of opportunity for that student to take it at the traditional public school. It also works the other way, where we've often seen traditional public school students that don't offer a specific extracurricular send their students to a charter school to have that opportunity. The bill does not address specific money sharing sort of agreements, so that would be up to a local school district and the charter school. And I think it's one of those areas that, rather than over legislate that on the front end, let's give two different public school options an opportunity to work that out amongst themselves. And if there are issues with fairness in terms of extracurricular offerings, that could be legislated at a future date.
Yeah, Senator Voigt.
Good follow-up, thank you. Could you provide specific information regarding funding and the contract period in terms of that financial consideration?
Yes, I'll take the first one first. So the funding is meant to work, and when we worked with the department for over a year and sort of doing this, essentially what we said is public charter schools should be funded in as close a manner to how traditional public schools are funded, given a state's funding formula. And so essentially, charter schools would be funded in the exact same manner as traditional public schools are funded from a mechanical perspective. And there are cross-references to existing parts of of the education formula that are in there. Charter schools will not get the full amount of funding. For example, local capital outlay funding would not go to a public charter school, but the bulk of state aid and local required amounts would pass through to a charter school. It would pass through the local school district, and the department would be responsible, as they are with the overall education funding formula, for determining how that would work, but it would function in the same manner. We just heard mention of a monthly count. That's the way it would work for charter schools too. And then, I'm sorry, can you repeat the second question about the contract?
In terms of accountability, in terms of that funding process.
In terms of the funding process specifically? Yeah, so it's articulated as one of the required components of the performance contract to do an annual financial audit and to have full transparency with the school's financials. That is an area that an authorizer can and should oversee closely. And so if a school is having financial issues in terms of the numbers they're showing, an authorizer could ask for corrective action. They could ask for specific financial reforms. They're required to follow accounting practices and principles, and ultimately the real accountability is in the transparency and reporting of that. And if the problem is significant enough, that is absolutely something an authorizer could close a school for financial mismanagement of any kind.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could follow up in terms of responsibility, what about student performance accountability? Is there any timeline, time frame, expectations?
The basic time frame is the term of the performance contract, and we have found 5 years, and so have additional organizations that represent charter school authorizers across the country, that 5 years is enough time. Starting a school is hard, right? It's a very difficult thing to do. 5 years has sort of been determined as a standard time for enough time to show high quality performance, and if you're not there at year 5, you probably shouldn't be renewed. That being said, if performance is low enough before then, within even a year, an authorizer could take action to close down a school. It's articulated in the legislation that academic performance has to be demonstrated on an annual basis. There's also a report that the department would be required to do annually to share with the legislature and the governor's office to look at charter school performance as a whole. So we're big believers in transparency is the best disinfectant, and performance, accountability, and innovation are the core tenets that define the charter school movement.
One more, thank you. Thank you. I want to reference the cost considerations. Generally, if I could put it in a nutshell, it's for staffing and instructional materials, generally.
Yeah, I think generally that's true. I mean, there's autonomy there, right? There's flexibility to determine how they're going to spend those public dollars. One thing that I think is a hallmark that you'll see in most public charter schools is a lot less funding spent on administration and back end and a lot more dollars that go directly into the classroom. That's important. We've seen that push broader public education systems to try to do more of that. I was part of a recent education funding formula in Tennessee, and we looked at what we saw charter schools doing and thought, how can we replicate that in the public system? How can we incentivize more dollars in the classroom? That's where we want them to be.
Continue the follow-up. What you're saying is the charter school determines, based upon their funding resources, what the instructional materials look like. You're not providing or being required to provide the same instructional materials, curriculum that is being offered in that public school?
That's a good question. Generally, that's true. I would make some small caveat or distinction. The legislation states very clearly that charter schools must be subject to the same South Dakota standards and the overall state assessments. But standards are not curriculum. Standards are not pacing guides, not what's going on in an individual classroom. If I can put it a different way, the model here is let's be a little looser on inputs and means, and let's be tighter and more stringent on outcomes and accountability.
One more. Oh, go on, Senator Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not sure which proponent this question's for, but the good senator from Sioux Falls asked if people had spoken to you about innovation. My question is, have you spoken to, and it seems to be schools on the west side of the state, about their opportunity for innovation? Magnet schools are an opportunity. Have we tried to set those up? Either Senator Nelson, have we had those conversations with the Rapid City School Board, for example?
State Senator Lauren Nelson, District 18. And no, you know who I've talked to? I've talked to parents. I've talked to parents who are needing something different for their children. And so, to be honest with you, no, but my main focus has been parents and families and what they want.
Thank you.
Sure, come on in.
Thank you. Have you spoken to your school board about this?
I have. Mandy Cheddar from Rapid City. I have met with our superintendent, both the new superintendent this year, the former superintendent last year. I have written letters to the school board, and I continuously get directed back to the superintendent, who tells me there's no funding available for anything like this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you, and I don't, excuse my ignorance,
Yeah.
okay, because I don't know your school district well. I have my examples of the district I taught in, and so we had a challenge center for students that would be, it seems like your student, and that it was the whole specific goal of that public school is to differentiate education for that student within the role of the current public school, and I just. Does your school have any differentiated educational opportunities, or
Sure.
do you only have the traditional public school?
Good question. I can only speak to the talented and gifted students, as that's where I have been addressing it, and there are no programming available. We've talked about, I've met with the school themselves and what they can do within the school. I meet with teachers every year in regards to Kai and what we can help him with, and then take it to the school board. And I am continuously met with, there's not funding, they can't do it. It's just not there. So we've tried individualized talented and gifted programs. I've asked to bring in old teachers, former teachers, see if they would like to volunteer to start a program like that, and I just can't get traction with it.
All right, thank you. I guess got another question for the proponent here. So if charter school starts as in the authorizing district, would they follow the same boundaries as the current school district?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Charlie Bufalino with the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools. Let me make sure I'm understanding your question. So you're asking if a local school board authorizes a public charter school, would that charter school have to exist within the boundaries of that local school district?
Yes, and would the boundaries be would just the boundaries of that school, of the charter school, then just follow the same boundaries as the school that was already in place?
No, under the legislation, the school would have to be physically located within the boundaries of the school district, but there could be some students recruited from neighboring school districts. This is actually something we've seen done in some states, particularly in rural areas, where they're offering maybe a very specific high school workforce development, career and technical education program, and rather than drawing just from a single school district in terms of that impact, there might be several students kind of coming from the surrounding area.
Okay, so then would they have to accept any student from basically anywhere in the state? Then it wouldn't really be the same as open enrollment issues when it comes to public schools. Is that correct?
It functions largely the same as open enrollment, I would say, in terms of students coming in. And I think there was a question earlier sort of about the admissions requirements, and someone said ability to sort of handpick students. Very clearly in the legislation, that's not allowed. Anyone who wants to attend a charter school can attend a charter school, subject only to capacity. And then the application simply gives some enrollment preferences if there's more demand than space available for articulated at-risk student subgroups or siblings. But other than that, it's a random lottery that determines admission. The charter school doesn't get a say of who comes in and who doesn't. That's part of what makes them public schools.
Okay. Senator Sauter.
If I can ask a question regarding that too. So if the school district, the regular school district, chooses they would like to put a child into your school, they can do that?
No, absolutely not. No one can compel a student or a family to attend a public charter school. It is the choice of the family and the student.
Okay, even though it's under that school, the auspices of that school district, the school cannot relocate that child into that public school, to that charter school.
That is correct. A local school district cannot force or compel a family to go to a public charter school.
Okay.
Senator Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll let you out of the hot seat for a second. I'll go to Rob Munson, if I could, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming forward. I guess one of your concerns you had was on accountability, who the teachers are accountable. 75% were licensed, 25% not. Can you elaborate on those concerns a little bit, please?
Mr. Chair, Rob Munson, Executive Director for School Administrators of South Dakota. Senator, thank you for the question. Even more concerning than the 75% being certified teachers and administrators being certified is the school level accountability to meet the requirement of the law of how we pay teachers. So I'm going to go back just real quick to the question I was asked to the school board's gentleman, Mr. Heath, and that was, how do we get the money that comes into the school district? The count day happens on the last Friday in September. That is filtered through the funding formula, which this committee should have a presentation on someday because it's complex and it's difficult, and you need to be able to understand it. And I'm getting a grin out of the senator there from Rapid City who understands.
I think that would take a few committees to understand that.
You have nothing but time left this session, Mr. Chair. So that money comes into the school district, and basically the crux of that funding formula says, based on the number on the last Friday in September, school district, and I'm going to say it's the Holgar School District, you get paid for 15 teachers, period. So the school district has to try and stay within that parameter of those 15 teachers to cover all of those students in that school district. What you are doing now is basically, with a charter school, setting up an entirely another school district within your school district. Now, we've had a lot of discussion in this building. I hate to even bring the word up. It's called consolidation, where we were trying to reduce schools, not grow schools. So now within that Holgar School District, and I'm going to pick on the Big Stone School District, who's no longer with us because they have consolidated with Millbank, they had approximately 100 students. So they were going to be funded for X number of teachers based on those 100 students. Now this charter school comes in and says, hey, We want to have a whole separate school within the school district. They get turned down by the local school district. They then turn to the Department of Education, who may say, we're going to allow you to do that. So now they peel 20 students off of the Big Stone School District. So they have 80 students, but they're still going to have to fund as if they have 100 students in that district, be accountable to the state of South Dakota on the money that comes in to pay those teachers. But they have to set up another system. Now, in a big school district like Rapid City or Sioux Falls, they may come from varying grade levels, and you can absorb that. The Big Stone School District is not going to be able to say, okay, we can absorb this. They're going to have to make some really hard decisions on, do we have a first grade or do we not have a first grade? Because we cannot afford all of the money that has to go into the teacher accountability based on state law in the funding formula. So we are truly setting up an additional school district inside a school district that is going to have to be paid for with money that comes from the state of South Dakota and property taxes, and there's not enough money to do that, Senator.
Well, since the accountability was brought up, so then if the, well, stay up there, hey, don't run away here. He's my constituent, so I can be, a little brown. So
I can neither confirm nor deny that.
So if the situation that you're describing happens, the school loses a few students, they might get a little less funding, they still have to pay the same amount that's required with that accountability. I mean, they're essentially having to pay the same amount for teaching less students. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Rob Munson, School Administrator of South Dakota. That was the whole crux of why I brought that up, is that they are not going, in this bill, nowhere does it say you get to get relief from the accountability based on the funding formula and your requirements to the state of South Dakota.
Okay, and he must know me too well, because that's kind of what I was going to ask. Is there, you see any relief in this bill? And he answered that without me asking. So, all right. Any further questions from the committee here? Senator Voigt.
If I could, Mr. Bunsen, thank you. The term that's been used most frequently in this conversation is accountability. Is there any place in the general public setting where there's accountability other than funding the last Friday in September or whatever? Where is accountability in terms of the public school systems versus my understanding with the charter in terms of them looking at student performance before they request consideration? Follow-up consideration on their part after they've been in place for a while.
Mr. Chair, Rob Munson, Executive Director, School Administrator of South Dakota. I think what you're getting at, Senator, is student performance accountability, correct? The students in public schools are required to take an assessment every year, grades 3 through 8 and 11. And those are reported, obviously, to the state of South Dakota, and then there's also federal requirements based on those assessments that must be met based on going way back to No Child Left Behind and then moving forward to new laws that are in place.
Follow-up. Clarify for me, in those performance standards that are set, is there any responsibility if that performance is not at, say, grade level? As per my understanding with charter schools, there is accountability or demonstrated proficiency on their part.
Mr. Chair, yes, there is, Senator. When those are reported to the state, there is a performance index that has to be achieved. And if that level is not achieved, the state of South Dakota can come in and, again, doing the duty they should be doing, not overseeing charter schools and school districts. They come in and are the regulatory board on accreditation and trying to improve student performance in those districts.
Yeah. Senator Peterson.
Thank you. A follow-up for Mr. Munson, please. So am I understanding you correctly that if a school doesn't meet those criteria set by the state, whether it's performance standards or test scores, that type of thing, that the Department of Ed comes in and evaluates that and then has the ability to disaccredit them, so to speak, or take away their accreditation?
Mr. Chair, Rob Munson, Executive Director, School Administrator of South Dakota. Senator, I believe if it got so severe there was no improvement being made, that accreditation could be taken away from a school district.
Follow up. Are there other remedies, or is it just accreditation?
Mr. Chair, I'm guessing, Senator, at some point funding could be an issue. That funding could be taken away from a school district, but I think the biggest thing that would hang over a school district would being a not accredited school.
one more follow-up. So how many schools in South Dakota who have had underperforming test scores or have not met criteria in other ways have had their accreditation taken away or funding taken away in the last 5 years?
Mr. Chair. Senator, I don't believe any have, but certainly the Department of Education would have better data on that, but I do not recall any districts losing their accreditation.
Follow-up, even though they may not have met the standards.
Mr. Chair, it would depend on the level of where the criteria is set on where you're at when the Department of Ed comes in and says you need to be performing at this level, or you go into school improvement, and when this department comes in and starts working with you, they are working to make sure that you are seeing improvement. If they don't, they would go to the next level of involvement from the Department of Education.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple other questions, not for Mr. Munson, though. A couple questions for Ms. Fairhead, please. Thanks for being here, and thanks for what you're doing for kids. The first question is, in your experience, have you found the public schools to be underfunded in your area?
Absolutely not.
The second question is,
Could you introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry. Mary Jo Fairhead. Mr. Chair.
Thanks. So the second question is, how would you determine, you said you weren't sure if you would seek charter school status. How would you determine whether you wanted to seek that status or whether you sought some other status? Or I guess kind of the question is, what would be the benefits to your school of charter school status if you would seek that?
To determine whether we would or not would be a decision made with my board, my parents, my families, and the community. So that's why I can't answer that question right now. It would be a conversation. The benefits would be being able to provide services, special education services in particular. We get a significant number of students with ADHD, dyslexia, those kinds of things, and I do have special education staff, but funding is an issue. And going back to your funding question, my experience as a teacher and a principal in the schools in my area, it's no secret that some of the highest paid teachers are in our district and the district over, and we spend more than most every district in the entire state with far lower academic outcomes. And no, there aren't repercussions financially, and the accreditation has not been pulled. It never will be. We're going to keep trying and trying and trying to improve outcomes, but at this point, it's not happening.
Thank you. And just one other question related to, Mr. Chair, related to how does it affect your ability to compete then if the highest paid teachers are in your district, yet you don't have the same funding options? How are you able to compete in terms of getting good teachers and paying them adequately?
When you create an environment that teachers want to be in, they come, first of all. Secondly, we don't have the expenses of a large school district, the administrative costs, the business office costs. We've found ways to, even with our academics or curriculum, it's very inexpensive. We've I don't want to say cut corners necessarily because it's high quality stuff, but we're just not spending as much as some of the other school districts, and we are competing with our salaries.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I do have one question for Representative Schwanz.
Okay.
Thanks for being here, Representative. You basically just did a Me Too supportive testimony, but I'd like to know a little bit about what it is that makes you supportive of this. So can you just tell us a little bit of that? Because I think there probably wasn't time during the regular testimony.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I have a strong support for this bill just because of the situation that I've had to go through.
We do want you to introduce yourself. Yes,
Representative Schwanz, District 9. So my story is my son went to the Sioux Falls School District for all of his school years. It was in the earlier parts of his education that he was lagging behind in reading and writing. it was during that time that he was falling behind, like in first and second grade. And it's like, well, maybe we'll get him caught up a little bit. By the time he was in 5th grade, we went through all the rigorous training or testing that was provided by the school district, and found that there was really nothing that potentially gave the thought that he was, had ADHD or any of the learning disabilities. So he was high on the spectrum. But I asked one of the principals if dyslexia was something that they considered, and they said that they did not believe dyslexia existed. So at that point, he was put on a 504 program. The 504 program was supposed to be implemented his 6th, 7th, and 8th grade years in middle school. And by the time he hit his 8th grade year, there was some issues with behavior. And by the time he was a freshman, one of the teachers at the high school in Sioux Falls pulled me aside and said that his 504 had never been implemented. And so at that point in time, he was falling in the gap. So he went to a training to a school up in Brookings where he was diagnosed with dyslexia. And so I paid out of pocket for him to go to dyslexia training for 2 or 3 weeks in Brookings, and then got him back on track. And thank God I did have a good teacher at the school district. And she was one of the teachers that helped with the 504s and the IEP programs. And so it was for that reason that I've experienced this. I've experienced a kid that has fallen in the gaps. I've seen how that can affect them emotionally and behaviorally, and how a lot of these kids are kind of getting left behind. And so I personally believe that charter schools would help to fill that gap and to help address some of those kids that maybe are falling in between the system. So that's why I definitely support this bill.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further questions from the committee at this time? Senator Marty.
Thank you, Ms. Chair, for Ms. Fairhead. They talked about dyslexia. Do you have a way of testing your children for dyslexia or not?
Mr. Chair, Mary Jo Fairhead. Yes, we do. We work with a specialized dyslexia tutor who works with, we have 8 students with dyslexia, including my own child. My oldest daughter has dyslexia. We work with a dyslexia specialist who tutors those students every single day, screens them, and I am actually enrolling in a graduate program for dyslexia.
Follow. Were those kids in public school with dyslexia? Were they diagnosed with that, or were they just passed on?
Great question. No, they were not diagnosed. I had one student in particular who had cancer in his eye as a baby, which caused severe vision issues and significant dyslexia. And his mother actually had to get a lawyer to get special services from the school district at one point in time. I had another student come to us in 4th grade with severe dyslexia. She was reading at a 1st grade level. We identified it, provided services. This year she's in 5th grade. She's made up 2.5 grade levels in reading.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. I think we'll have a few more minutes of questions if we need to, but I think, okay. Any further questions from the committee? Oh, Senator Boyd?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could ask the lady to come back again. Could you give me a perspective in terms of the last 3 to 4 years, the number of students that you are serving? What is the background of those students in terms of social economic status of those families?
Sure, Mr. Chair. Well, to start, about 90% of our students are tribally enrolled. Nearly all of them qualify for tuition assistance through the tribe, which is income-based, so they have to be below 150% of the poverty level. Many of them come to us because they are either just struggling academically, emotionally, mentally. We've had students come to us with significant suicidal ideation and depression. Yeah, to answer your question.
Follow up if I could.
Mm-hmm.
Those students that you're serving, how many school districts are they coming from? I know you're on a border there.
Yep.
Where are they coming from?
They predominantly come from Oglala, Lakota County, Bennett County, and Jackson County.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Seeing no further questions from the committee, we will go into committee discussion and or action. Voigt.
I move we pass as presented.
We have a motion for due pass from Senator Voigt, seconded by Senator Marty. Comments on that motion? Motion is due pass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could, I think the individual that just spoke with us here the last time give an example of what a mentality that we have with students in terms of whether or not it's a structured organization or we do what we need to do so students can be successful. A history thing with me, I ran middle school and high schools for over 20 years in Rapid. First thing we did at staff meeting in the fall was I had to get them to shut up talking about the baseball games this summer or their golf status. One thing we understood, whatever building I was in, God didn't make no junk. These kids ain't junk. If I ever hear of anything like that, we're going to have an issue. And I think that's the situation here. Basically, it gets back to the parents. Anything we can do with parents to get them engaged and take responsibility, that child and that staff and local parentis, when they're under our supervision, has a chance. Otherwise, it's a tough road for kids, as has been shared.
Thank you. Further comments from the committee? Senator Smith, and we'll go to Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do appreciate the good discussion we had on this, and I appreciated the discussions I've had with the sponsor and then also the gentleman that came in to help with this. I've learned a lot. I will be resisting this motion, and it comes back down to the problem I had in the very beginning when we sat down. I don't believe this is going to help the kids that we really, really want it to help. And it comes down to our geography in the state of South Dakota. And it comes down to peeling off students out of the formula in districts that cannot afford to lose students. I want every kid in this state to be met at their level and taught at that level. I guess I was very fortunate to teach in a district that did that. That had different opportunities, and I would encourage the districts across our state to use alternative ways of doing things and bring those magnet school opportunities there. And when it comes to kids on 504s, I have a kid on a 504, and it was frustrating. It was hard. We had to finally go to not the Shriners, but I'm going to say the name wrong, but they were the ones that finally diagnosed him with dysgraphia. The problem was that he performed at grade level. And when you have kids performing at grade level, you're not going to find out certain things along the way. And so I think we need to keep working. Every kid does matter. I understand that. But until we fully fund education in the state of South Dakota at a level that allows us to do other things, I cannot support this bill, unfortunately.
Senator Sauter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to echo what the good senator from Sioux Falls just said. I am very sympathetic to the needs of all children and the super smart ones, the highly advanced achievement kids, and the ones that really struggle every day. I've had both in my family and in my teaching career, and it is difficult on both ends. I'll be resisting this motion on the grounds that this bill itself, it's too there's too much ambiguity in it. Is it a school district? You're under a school district, but we're not going to follow the school district's laws. The rules, the teachers in the regular tradition have to meet certain requirements, but the teachers in these charter schools don't have to meet the requirements. There's too much the confusion for me, and while I appreciate the premise and the intention of this bill, I cannot in good conscience vote for it.
like to any comments? Senator Marty?
I'd just like to make a comment to the good senator looking directly at me. I disagree with your statement because I do know a school that my Miss Fairhead started, and most of her students did not excel in public schools. They didn't want to go to school and all sorts of issues. And through Miss Fairhead's school, they're excelling now. So I think charter schools would be a good place for kids that are really struggling with parent involvement.
Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, we heard a lot of objections to the logistics of the bill and to funding concerns. But one thing I think that's highly notable is that the Department of Education is not here testifying against this bill. And I think if they had concerns about it, they would be here. And I did not hear them testify as an opponent. So I think that speaks volumes. I think the sponsor has done a good job of working with any number of the constituencies, so to speak, including the Department of Ed. And honestly, I had a concern about out-of-state groups coming in and doing remote school and having providing a computer and having a 1 to 20,000 student ratio or something like that, where they really weren't providing a learning environment. And I asked for the amendment because I want to safeguard this so that it's South Dakota folks and they're providing in-person learning at a South Dakota location. And I think that's what we're hearing the parents need. I think that there is an opportunity at some point for maybe the Department of Ed to develop a robust virtual option, but I did not want that to be this. And so I did request that amendment and appreciate the sponsor accommodating that. So with all that said, I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator. All right, we'll go to Senator Sauter and then Senator Nelson. Senator Sauter.
If I can just respond to the previous speaker's comment about the DOE not being here, so they're not in opposition. Let's look at it the other way. They're not here, so I can't say they're in favor of this bill either way. So I think the DOE is kind of a wash as far as a discussion in this.
Yeah, Senator Nelson.
Yeah, just a lot of the opponent testimony. What I'm hearing is we're concerned about the teachers. We're concerned about the money. We're concerned about the administration. Where's the concern about the students? And that's where my concern is. I spent years as an administrator listening to the stories from parents about how their children were struggling and thankful there was an option in Yankton for their children. And like the good, one of the speakers said before, this is not replacing public education. This is another tool in the tool belt for parents. What I like about charter schools is, there's not as much, you would say, not oversight, but hoops you have to jump through. And the reason for that is to allow for flexibility, to meet the needs of your community. And that's the key here is there's not going to be a charter school that's going to pop up tomorrow in my community. I saw an application of a charter school in Montana. It was a binder. It was huge. It was thick. It takes work. To start a charter school is not a fly-by-the-night situation. It takes work to get it done, and there needs to be local effort. And so that's when I hear people saying about these rural schools, they're going to lose schools. I don't see this in rural schools because typically rural schools like their schools. They're rural. They're small. People are invested. I see this more of opportunities for our Native Americans. I see this opportunities in our larger districts, Sioux Falls, Rapid City, maybe even Yankton or Watertown or things like that, where there is a need. And also, too, what I like about it is they're specialized. They can be for kids with dyslexia. They can be for kids that are maybe dropouts. I heard of a charter school that caters to kids that have dropped out of school. And they have a huge success rate of getting these kids their graduation certificates. So that's why I'm supporting this, because like the speaker said before, this is just another tool for our parents in South Dakota.
All right, thank you, Senator. Seeing no farther committee discussion, we have a motion for due pass as amended on Senate Bill 218. Secretary will call the roll.
Senators Marty.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Peterson.
Aye.
Sauter.
No.
Smith. Voigt.
Aye.
Shanefish.
No.
Mr. Chair, we have 4 yay, 3 nay.
Motion carries. We have reached the
What a surprise.
well, we have reached the end of our agenda for the day. So before everyone gets too carried away, we do need a motion to adjourn. That's Kim. We need a motion to adjourn. Motion by Senator Sauter, seconded by Senator Peterson. Those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Now you can all run.
From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. choir to debate to theater. SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts Programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder.
Good morning. We'll call Senate Ag and Natural Resources Committee meeting to order. I'd like to remind everyone to please turn off or silence your cell phones. We don't need the extra interruptions. I think I want to greet everybody online and those that are watching the streaming now or maybe listening online. I want to remind all of our testifiers too, and I'll go over it in just a second about signing in to testify if you haven't done that before. It's all online now. So with that, I'd ask the Secretary to call the roll.
Senators Davis, excused. Duhamel, excused. Marty.
Here.
Voigt.
Here.
Whip.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
Pischke.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'd ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
So moved.
Senator Pischke moves to approve minutes, seconded by Senator Voigt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. The minutes are approved. So before we start, I think we have both pages in the room. Would you like to come forward and introduce yourself? And while they're doing that, if you have any handouts for the committee, please give them to the pages to distribute. So your name, where you're from, and future plans.
Hi, my name is Quinn Nielsen. I'm from Sioux Valley High School, and my future plans are to attend SDSU to double major in political science and vocal performance, and then I plan to attend law school.
My name is Rachel Stephenson. I'm going to Arlington High School, and after high school, I plan to go to SDSU for elementary education.
Okay, thank you. And the pages are invaluable to how we operate. They do so much for us. Again, I'd like to remind lobbyists, you know the drill. You come up, introduce yourself, make sure you have your proper credentials. If you plan to testify, you can do so on the iPad at the podium over there. If you're not sure how to do it, the pages can assist you with that. You can also do it with the QR code on your phone. When you register, it comes automatically on the system now, so we know who you are. And all of the remote testifiers that have set up and called in, your name is on the register already. So as we move forward, everybody's listed. If you haven't testified before, when you come to the microphone, push the button, please. And then when it's green, introduce yourself and where you're from, and if you're testifying on your own behalf or for an organization. That helps us keep things running smoothly. So, just a reminder to all questions will flow through the chair. If you have committee members, if you have a quick follow-up, go ahead. That just helps speed up the process a little bit. So with that, we will move right into our committee agenda. Senate Bill 160, require the registration of fishing guides. Do we have any proponent testimony? Good morning, Senator.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Senator Tom Pischke. I come from District 25 and reside in the great municipality of Del Rapids. Come before you today with Senate Bill 160. Before we get going, I would ask for a favor of the committee to amend it with 160C, as in 160 crappie.
Okay, is that online?
It is.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion to approve move the amendment.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Senator Voigt. Seconded by Senator Marty. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, you can speak to 160C as amended. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Okay, come before you today with Senate Bill 160C. We're going to talk about fishing guides. So, as you guys have probably heard, there's been a lot of talk about guides and that sort of thing in the legislature. And this is my attempt to start a conversation about that and see where we go. While some of my proponent friends behind me may disagree, this legislation is not intended to open the door for legislation for licensure for hunting guides. That is not my intent here today. Guiding on private land is already illegal, and I believe it should remain illegal. Private property rights has been a big issue in the legislature over the past 3 years, and I've been a big supporter of those property rights. It's not my intention to dictate, as a state legislator, what a landowner can or can't do on their own land. If they want to guide a hunting trip on their own land or employ others to guide hunts on their own land, that's their fundamental right to do so. But when it comes to public waters, the argument is different in my mind. Many of our lakes and rivers are open to the public for recreation and fishing. And when I think about guiding on those public waters, I think about you are harvesting a public resource and making a living from that public resource and doing that on public waters as well. And that's what brings this bill before you brings forward that essential idea that, again, guides are making a living harvesting of a public resource. Before I get too far into this, I want to just mention that I worked with the landowner groups to ensure this amended legislation does not conflict with the revisions made to the Open Fields Doctrine of 2021, and it's my hope that they remain neutral here today. This legislation does not require the guides to ensure that they show any sticker or emblem. It only requires a small fee and requires reporting back to the GFMP so that the natural resource that is being harvested can then be stocked into the waters accordingly. So I just want to step through the legislation with you a little bit. Section 1 has been amended. As you see in the red text there, it talks about only on public waters. Again, not my intention to require a guide to license on anything that's on private land. If a lake is entirely on your property, this licensure does not affect that. I changed the registration age to be a guide to be 18. I think that's appropriate. I think that if you're 18 years of age, you're a consenting adult, and that you can do the guiding. I think that 21, there were some ideas about alcohol or whatnot in there. I don't think that needs to be applicable to this legislation. Again, completely palms up with you guys. I picked the fees of $50 for a resident and $250 for a non-resident. I'll be palms up. I just grasping at straws, right? I'm just picking numbers out of the air, and for whatever, if you guys like different numbers, I'm okay with that. If you like lower numbers, whatever it may be, this is a conversation for this committee. The main part about this is, to me, it's the reporting aspect. So again, we have guides that are making a living harvesting a natural resource. It's my wish and desire with this legislation is that we set up a reporting requirement so that we know how many fish are being taken from the public lakes, and so that the GFMP has an idea where to restock and how many fish to restock and what species to restock. That's really the light touch approach that I'm trying to take here with this legislation. I'm not trying to make it very onerous as far as a fee. I'm not trying to make you be insured in any way. I'm not trying to make they have to have any sticker on their snow bear or on their boat. That's not my intention whatsoever. I feel like they're taking, the guides are making a living on a public resource, on public waters, and there should be some sort of monies that are set aside to replenish that natural resource. And so that's the idea here in front of you. I'm sure there's going to be lots of opposition, lots of conversation, and I appreciate those comments, and I will stand by for questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any other proponent testimony in the room? I see we have one online. We will come back to that. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Here I am again. I'm here to support Senator Pischke's bill. It may not be a perfect bill, but I think it's a great start. There's kind of an elephant in the room that nobody has really talked about yet. When people come to South Dakota, largely from out of state, they do so because they're expecting to have a quality experience.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
My name is George Vandell. I live in Pierre, South Dakota, and I'm a registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Wildlife Federation, the South Dakota Isaac Walton League, the South Dakota Waterfowl Association, and the South Dakota Lakes and Streams. I'm primarily testifying on behalf of the South Dakota Wildlife Federation, excuse me, and the Isaac Walton League today. The elephant in the room is that when these non-residents, predominantly non-residents, come to South Dakota and hire a fishing guide, they're putting a lot of trust in that service, okay? And nobody else seems to really care about the customers that come here. And I find it a little ironic and a little disturbing that only the South Dakota Wildlife Federation seems to care that these people are treated a number of ways. First of all, they're treated fairly. We don't know when they come here and what their expectations are without some type of licensing and registration and ability to get bad actors out of the system, that they're treated fairly. They want to be treated professionally. They want the people to show up on time with the proper equipment and the proper knowledge to take them out and catch fish. I mean, if they want to go for a boat ride, they can come visit somebody like me, and I can take them out on the water and we'll catch a couple of fish, okay? They want to have people that can literally send them back home with a limit. Third, they want to do so safely. These are hazardous situations out there. Thunderstorms can come up quickly, and you have to have somebody, a professional, who knows when to get that boat off the water, what to do in case of an emergency, what to do in case of somebody gets a hook in their arm, in their finger, what to do if somebody has a health emergency on the water. They have to be equipped to do that. We don't know if they are or they are not. And finally, they have to be fishing legally. When a novice or an amateur comes to South Dakota and hires a guide, they don't know what the fishing regulations are. The fishing regulations in the state of South Dakota are really quite straightforward when you compare them to other states. I've gone to other states, and frankly, I didn't have enough time to read through all the regulations and all the nuances of those regulations. And I trusted a guide to make sure that they knew what those were. So I think it's a very important consideration when we go through this. The opponents are going to talk to you about things that are bad with this bill, and I understand that. But virtually all of these opponents are making have an extreme financial interest in this. It seems like only people like the South Dakota Wildlife Federation actually care about these people who come here. That's why they're licensed in virtually every other state, particularly those who have an active fishery and have a lot of fishing going on. They've found out that there are some bad actors out there. And the only way to ensure the safety and the legality of these people is to license them. That's why they do it. Okay, we're not out to put guides out of business. A lot of them are friends of mine. When I fish Lake Oahe, I know most of the guides. Frankly, the ones that are out of pier are really decent people. If you have fish to clean, they'll move off the cleaning table so you can clean your fish. If you're in a pickle, they'll help you out. Okay, I don't know if all the guides in the state of South Dakota act that way. I've actually fished around some guides that I thought were absolutely rude and were bullies on the water. Okay, those people should be rung up and they shouldn't have a license. So I'm encouraging you to pass this legislation, and let's try and get through this. And let's try and find a way to make sure that these guests who come to the state of South Dakota are treated fairly and honestly and safely. And I stand by if you have any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other proponent testimony in the room? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. My name is John Simpson. I live here in Pierre, and I represent myself. I'm just one of tens of thousands of residents that buy a hunting and fishing license every year, and I love it. I'm here today in favor of Senator Piskey's bill. I think licensing or registering guides, as George said, it gives them a professional identification, gives them credentials. It seems to give them some legitimacy and that they're reliable, they're experienced, they're probably respected, they have credibility. And if I were a guide, I'd want all of those things and more. And I'd want to be safe for my clients on the water. I looked at some of the info here in the Pierre area. For 1 to 2 anglers a day, the price range is $450 to $650 a day. And that's a fairly substantial sum. The price for this registration fee is $50. That won't fill your truck gas tank, and it won't fill your boat gas tank. Some of the opponents are going to claim that the world's going to crash and non-residents won't come to the state, and the world's going to end because we have a registered guide system. As like George said, I've been to other states and Canada and hunted with licensed registered guides, and I think the non-residents that come to South Dakota will continue to come to South Dakota. Game Fish and Parks already issues about 36 other kinds of licenses for a wide variety of things. Scientific collectors, all kinds of hunting and fishing licenses, collectors licenses, etc. A registered or licensed guide, I don't believe is going to be a real department killer when they already have 36 on the books minimum. I like the proposed amendment that Senator Piskey has mentioned. I think it's a good idea. There are approximately 10 to 15 other inland states in our country that do license guides or have some form of training required or some form of registration. Maybe the devil's in the details. If you don't want to deal with those details, a real simple, easy way to do is pass this bill in a pretty neutral form and let the Game Fish and Parks Commission establish rules and regulations. They're pretty good at that. They've been doing it for a very long time, managing both our wildlife and those that are trying to harvest them. We have a lot of rules and regulations. I think it'd be very easy to set up the same kind of a system for fishing guides. I think about the responsibility that guides have on the water. Several years ago, a pure area fishing guide himself died on the water, had clients. They were essentially on the shoreline, spring fishing for northern pike. The boat got away. The guide said, "Don't worry, I'll swim out and get it." When the water temp in Lake Hawaii is around 38 or 40 degrees, that doesn't work very well, and the dive team had to rescue him off the bottom of the lake. But a similar incident could happen with a client. And the liability of that particular kind of issue concerns me. If I were a guide, I'd be really concerned about that. It can happen. Thankfully, unfortunately, very, very rare, and hopefully never. But accidents happen. Could be a car accident, too. Could be a guide and a fishing excursion with clients. I think guides in South Dakota should be licensed because I have a lot of trouble thinking of another profession that's not licensed. Morticians are licensed. Pesticide applicators are licensed. Massage therapists are licensed. Obviously, all the professionals, doctors, medical field, attorneys, financial planners. Fishing guides being licensed makes common sense to me. We have so many other licenses for a host of professions in South Dakota. In the end, I think you should keep this discussion going forward. The bill can be amended again, even though the senators amended it once. The committee has the authority to keep the issue of licensing guides moving. If it has to be neutralized a little bit, toned down a bit, that's fine. Let's keep it moving and eventually end up with some form of registration or licensing for fishing guides in South Dakota. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other proponent testimony in the room? Good morning, and hopefully we can refrain from too much redundant.
Yes, sir. My name is Dana
Thank
Rogers.
you.
I'm the executive director of the South Dakota Wildlife Federation and a registered lobbyist for the Isaac Walton League, South Dakota Lakes and Streams. I'm not going to duplicate what my fine friend Mr. Simpson and my colleague Mr. Vandell said. I'm just going to simply say the Wildlife Federation is here for the resource, for the resident sportsmen, and even for our non-resident guests. All right, this is an issue where they're directly profiting from a wildlife resource. My cousin is a fishing guide, and his boat is probably over 120 grand. He's not hurting. He's doing very well, and he's a good guide. I've fished with guides all over America. I've fished guides in Canada, the Great Lakes, and 4 or 5 times here in South Dakota. I love them. Okay, we're talking about the resource. We're worried and we're concerned that the resource will continue to thrive, prosper, and be here for everyone. If you look at the Glacial Lakes, a lot of folks are saying there's a lot of issues up there. I'd encourage you to talk to folks like that, and the rest will be me too, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other proponent testimony in the room? I think we had some signed up online. I only see one that's online right now. Cody Warner, are you online right now?
I am.
Yes, go ahead and introduce yourself and start your testimony.
My name is Cody Warner. I live in Webster, South Dakota. I'm representing myself today. I'm testifying today in support of SB 160. I believe it's time that fishing guides are licensed in the state. Being in Webster, I've kind of watched the exponential growth of guides in my area. I'm going to try to keep this quick. I'm going to say a lot of Me Too stuff. I implore you to ask you some questions about some of the opponents maybe that are coming up. Why do we not want to know what's going on in our public waters? Shouldn't our state agency want to know how many guides are operating on our public waters? I strongly feel we should want to know how many guides are operating on our waters. I guarantee you have asked the state Game and Fish, could tell you how many fishermen are in the state. They could break it down by demographics. They could break it down by male and female, non-resident, resident, how many days they fished, how many fish they caught. I bet if you asked them how many guides operate under public trust waters, they won't have a clue. They're also going to say that the world's going to end if we have a bill like this as far as commerce and dollars brought into the state. I don't think that's going to happen. I applaud Senator Pischke bringing this bill. I think it's common sense. I think it's time. And as the other folks have said, let's get this to the floor. We can work on this if it needs some work, but I thank you for the opportunity to testify. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see no more online that have logged in. Any other proponent testimony in the room? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to opponent testimony. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Scott Simpson, Deputy Secretary, South Dakota Game Fish and Parks. Chair and members of the committee, I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 160. At first glance, this proposal appears to be a simple registration requirement for fishing guides. But when we look at how this concept would be implemented, it's easy to recognize this bill does not meet the high bar needed for good legislation. To begin with, this bill regulates individuals who provide fishing guide services, not the guiding business. An individual who provides guide service without registering commits a Class 1 misdemeanor, and each client becomes an additional Class 1 misdemeanor. It was mentioned that we're trying to deal with this thing with some light touch. I would tell you that a Class 1 misdemeanor is punishable by up to 1 year in county jail and a $2,000 fine or both. Common Class 1 offenses in South Dakota include simple assault, driving under the influence, possession of 2 ounces or less of marijuana, and stalking. This makes it critically important to understand who is considered a guide under this law. The bill says someone becomes a guide if they provide services for consideration, but nowhere in this bill can I find where consideration is defined. This lack of clarity creates real problems. If I take someone fishing and they offer to cover gas, buy lunch, or bring bait, have I now provided guide services for consideration? If a friend insists on paying for fuel, is that consideration? Without a clear definition, ordinary South Dakota hospitality becomes legally uncertain. When people cannot tell where the line is, enforcement becomes inconsistent, and well-meaning citizens may unknowingly violate the law. This bill also creates gray area for conservation officers. How do officers decide if consideration was involved? Again, is it only money? Is it gas? A favor? Without clear standards, enforcement becomes subjective and creates confusion for our officers and the public. The daily reporting requirement adds another layer of concern. At the end of each day, guides would need to report client names and addresses, which, by the way, we should have because they already have because they bought a fishing license, where they fished, and the species and number of fish taken. Not only is the cost of creating an online reporting system not contemplated in the bill, the reporting is tied to one of the most complicated parts of the bill, the requirement that registration fees be used proportionally to support fish stocking in the waters where the fish were taken. That sounds straightforward in theory, but the way this bill is worded, fish stocking would not be based on the number of fish harvested or guiding days on a specific lake. The bill requires each lake used by a guide to be restocked equally with the funds generated through the guide registration. So how would this work in practice? If guided trips take place on 100 lakes, and this program generates, let's say, $30,000, the department would be required to spend $300 on each one of those 100 lakes. Regardless of how big or small the lake is, where it is located, the number of fish caught out of that lake, or if our staff has a stocking plan for a given lake that spring. This creates a funding system that sounds precise but would be extremely difficult to administer in reality. It raises serious questions about the proportional allocation and how that would be calculated, implemented, or reviewed. This bill assumes there is a conservation gap that needs to be filled, But South Dakota already has licensing system, harvest limits, and biological monitoring in place. There has been no clear evidence showing that unregistered guides are harming the resource. And finally, the biggest missing detail of all, the lack of engagement with the fishing guides themselves. The proponents of this bill have not significantly involved the people who will be regulated while drafting the details of this legislation. There has been no broad conversation about what makes sense, what doesn't, and how regulation can be structured to support both conservation and livelihoods. Until that conversation happens, this bill is not a partnership, it's a mandate. No one here is arguing against reasonable standards, but regulation works best when it is built with stakeholders, not imposed on them. At its core, this bill depends on an undefined term, consideration, and creates a funding structure that becomes complex once applied in real-world fishery management. Until those gaps are addressed, especially what consideration means and how proportional restocking would function, this bill leaves too many unanswered questions. Laws should be clear and workable before they can create criminal penalties and administrative burdens. For these reasons, I respectfully urge you to oppose Senate Bill 160 and send it to the 41st day. And I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you. Do we have any other opponent testimony? Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Chesney Garnis, raised in Presho, South Dakota, and I am a registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Upland Outfitters Association. Our association represents more than 90 hunting lodges, hunting guides, and fishing guides across South Dakota. We are a nonprofit group committed to sustaining wildlife, honoring our veterans, educating our youth, and protecting South Dakota's rich outdoor heritage. We rise in strong opposition to Senate Bill 160. First, I want to point out that this bill does not define what a hunting guide actually is, and that lack of clarity is very concerning. Recently, actually probably 3 weeks ago, I think now, I spoke with a rancher from Lyman County who shared a real concern when hearing about this legislation. Once a year, he rents a boat in Oklahoma, which is right along the Missouri River, and takes his family fishing. Under this bill as written, would that once a year family outing suddenly classify him as a guide? That ambiguity is a problem. Second, the bill requires a person to be at least 18 years old to obtain a fishing guide license. This would shut the door on responsible teenagers who currently help with family guiding businesses, youth outdoor programs, or mentorship-based activities. These young people gain true, valuable experience, and this bill would ultimately create consequences for those young individuals. Finally, which was previously stated by the individual before me, under Section 1 of this bill, anyone who guides without this license would be guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor. That is a severe penalty for something as simple as taking a friend or family member out boating without the proper paperwork. While I do not believe this is the good sponsor's intent, the legislation as written creates confusion, it creates a burden on our small operations, it shuts out our youth, and it criminalizes normal South Dakotans for simply sharing the love for the outdoors that many of us in this room have. Please do not pass Senate Bill 160. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponent testimony in the room? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Justin Smith, attorney from Sioux Falls, the registered lobbyist for the Tourism Coalition of South Dakota. We respectfully oppose SB 160, which would create a state-level registration and reporting requirement for fishing guides. There has been no documented public safety issue in South Dakota's guided fishing sector that warrants this level of new regulation. Existing laws already govern boat safety, waterways use, taxation, and operator conduct. Fishing guides are licensed anglers, insured business operators, and registered taxpayers. No evidence has been presented showing these existing tools are insufficient. So what specific problem is this bill then intended to address? Section 3, for example, illustrates how overregulated this proposal would be. It requires each registered guide to electronically submit at the conclusion of every daily trip the date, registration number, full name and address of each client, and so forth. This proposal would impose requirements that exceed those placed even on big game hunters. If there's a legitimate need for this information, much of it is already captured through the purchase of fishing licenses, which GF&P already maintains. If the concern is tax compliance, the Department of Revenue already has authority and mechanisms to monitor business activity and enforce sales tax reporting. If the concern is resource management, GF&P already conducts CREOL surveys and biological monitoring. So this duplicates existing oversight without identifying a demonstrated failure in the current system. Finally, enforcement of new licensure and daily reporting mandates will require additional agency resources at a time when field capacity is already limited. You've heard that from GF&P this morning and some of the other issues that they've raised with the bill. So for the reasons that I've stated and all those stated by the previous opponents, we'd ask you to please defeat this legislation. Similar legislation was already defeated in the House earlier this session. I'll stand by for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponent testimony? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Nathan Sanderson, I'm the Executive Director of the South Dakota Retailers Association. We're also opposing the bill this morning. I won't be repetitive, but I want to share how this bill would actually work in practice. So if you look at Section 1 of the bill, it says an individual cannot, for consideration, as has been mentioned, provide fishing guiding services. And then shortly after that, it says, if you, for consideration, provide those services, you are guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor. So how does this work? This last summer, I contacted one of my son's friends and said, hey, where are the fish biting? And he said, oh, I'm going out this afternoon. Come along with me. So he takes me on his boat out to Lake Oahe. We went fishing for the afternoon. It was great. Caught our limit. Fantastic. He went. We helped clean him. All that kind of thing. It was great. I gave him $50 for gas and for taking me out for the day. He's 18 years old. It's his own boat. I gave him consideration, and under this bill, he would have been guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor for providing guiding services without a license. I'm not here to say that some of the concepts that the proponents are talking about, they're really talking about like full-time fishing guides, right? People who are doing this for their living. But that's not what the definition of the bill covers. We would urge your opposition.
Thank you. Any other opponent testimony in the room? I don't see any online. Okay, good. Thank you. Opponent testimony. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Paul Steffen of Pierce, South Dakota. I am here to represent myself in opposition of Senate Bill 160. I will start with a quick background of myself. I started guiding fishing in 2000 at the age of 16 for Sunset Lodge, which from there evolved into me running my own full-service lodge. My concern of this bill is the required age of 18. If I wasn't able to start guiding at the age of 16, I would more than likely not be able to be a fishing guide today. Majority of the resorts and lodges up and down the Missouri River system are family-owned. These family-owned places have their children guiding before the age of 18. These unqualified minors, according to this bill, have hundreds and thousands of hours learning and training side by side with their family members. I also run a 28-foot pontoon as my guide boat. I typically take out larger groups. I hire high school kids every year to help me guide all summer long. He has just as many responsibilities as I do on the boat. With this bill, I can't hire him. Secondly, I can understand having a full fishing guide license, but I cannot understand why we should have to report daily catches, clientele lists, and if we forget to report a day, we could lose our license. My day begins at 6 a.m. and ends typically around 10 p.m. I am the cook, I am the guide, and I am also the dishwasher of my place. Therefore, it can be really easy for me to forget to submit a day. This reporting is unrealistic and burdensome. Why not have the GF&P CREOL survey at the boat docks to collect this data from guides and pleasure fishermen? Thirdly, it says fees collected for licenses would be used proportionally to support fish stocking in bodies of water in which fish were taken with proposed dues. And my guess for total guides in this state, over half of these dues collected will need to be used to staff people for these new positions by the GF&P. I believe a very good question for the GF&P would be how much it costs per fingerling to stock a body of water. This small amount of revenue set aside for stocking from this bill will have almost zero positive impact for these fisheries. The northeast portion of the state is where all these problems are coming from. So why not kindly ask the GFMP to ramp up efforts to gather more information in these regions through curial surveys and other methods? My last thoughts for you, ladies and gentlemen, I invite every one of you out to my operation to oversee a day in the life of the guide. If we truly want a successful guide bill, it would be beneficial to have input from guides. Thank you for your time. Please vote no on Senate Bill 160.
Thank you. Do we have any other opponent testimony? Good morning.
Hi, my name is Cody Nelson. I'm from Pierre, South Dakota. I'm going to touch a little bit on the age requirement. So my name is Cody Nelson. My parents have owned a hunting and fishing resort for 23 years now. My wife and I are planning to take it over in the next couple years. I've been in this industry for most of my life. I started guiding on my own when I was 15. That job taught me responsibility, work ethic, and how to run a business long before I was even old enough to vote. It kept me out of trouble, taught me how to work with people, and helped me build a career that now employs many others, brings a lot of tourism dollars to the state. This proposed law would require fishing guides to be 18. I respectfully believe that doesn't make sense. We already trust a 16 and 17-year-old to drive vehicles, work heavy equipment, and hold real jobs. Many young people in rural state of South Dakota grow up on these waters. Raising the age limit to 18 will hurt small family businesses, limit opportunities for young people to push the next generation out of guiding instead of into it. I want my sons and other kids to have the same opportunities I had to learn, earn, and build something here at their home. South Dakota should be encouraging young entrepreneurs, not blocking them. I urge you to reconsider this bill and support training and mentorship instead of restrict the age limit. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other opponent testimony? There's none online. Do we have any other opponent testimony in the room? Okay, seeing none, I'll offer time for rebuttal.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Again, my name is Senator Tom Pischke, and come for a few rebuttal comments, I guess. Again, I applaud all the proponents and opponents and giving us a conversation here, things to think about. Just want to go through a few things. Mr. Simpson of the GFMP said that clients would be charged with a Class 1 misdemeanor. When I read the bill, I don't see that at all. It says that the person that's a guide, if they're would be the one that has a Class 1 misdemeanor. I don't read that as otherwise. So just clear that up, I guess. And many times the definition of a fishing guide has been brought up in the opponent testimony. I do agree that maybe that's something we can work on. I did talk to the LRC about that, and we hem-hawed on what we should do there, and we decided just to go forward with what we have is fine, because we thought that if you're being paid or receiving consideration, that would then justify you as being a fishing guide. So, but if that's something that the committee would like to have defined better or something in the future, certainly willing to put that definition in there. I think that was a lot of the opposition, was that definition. Let's see here. I don't feel like it's shutting the door for the youth. I mean, some conversation was made about having it 18. I mean, again, if we want to change the language and make it 12, I mean, that's when you start hunting, right? So if you want to make someone to be a fishing guide at 12, we can change the language to that. But again, I think we've run into issues with minors engaging in contracts. And I think we've had some conversation about that. And under the age of 18, you're considered a minor. So that's why I've settled on the age of 18. So again, if you guys want to modify the language and put it at 12, put it at 6, put it at 35, I don't care. It's up to you guys. So that's something to consider. Again, Mr. Sanderson talked about consideration, paying somebody $50. I wouldn't consider that, that person is not a licensed guide. I mean, they're just giving a tip and reimbursing for some of the expenses that they did during that process. Mr. Steffen, I appreciate his comments. He says his day starts at 6 a.m. and ends at 10 p.m. That sounds like a typical Tuesday for me in the legislature, but yet I still find time to respond to some of my clients and get on my computer and respond to emails, do some of my work, and do all that stuff too. I don't think that getting on an app from the GF&P and reporting how many fish you caught during your fishing trip is gonna be too burdensome. I mean, it's probably gonna take less than 5 minutes at the most. So, but appreciate all the conversation, all the comments made by the opponents, and I'll stand by for questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee? I'll start with one or two. Yes, for the prime sponsor. If somebody is guiding, I'm trying to figure out the reporting piece. So if you're up in the northeast part of the state and all the pothole lakes, and say you hit Ponce, Enemy Swim, and a bunch of other 3 or 4 lakes in that day, how would they report how many fish they took out of each lake?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. Again, Senator Tom Pischke from Del Rapids. Yeah, if you're on multiple lakes, I'd envision the reporting on the GF&P site to say, you were at Lake 1, what the lake was, what the species you caught, and then just having like some drop-down fields, or even just a text field, you enter it in. So you were on, Ponce, for example, right? And you caught 4 walleyes, and the fish weren't biting that good, and then you went to Clear Lake or something up by Thomas, and then you caught some crappie up there. That would be the next submission under that, and that would all be on the same day. So just simple data reporting.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Davis.
Question for Game Fish and Parks. Kind of along the lines of the previous question, looking at the different requirements that the bill is asking guides to report on. Does the department have infrastructure in place to build this system, have this system? I mean, I know we're all used to, technology and things like that for the most part, but I'm wondering if you can tell me, does the department have the capabilities to actually, would you have to go out and build a program, or how would that look?
Through the chair. Scott Simpson, Deputy Secretary, Game Fish and Parks. Senator Davis, I would say that over time we have created maybe the infrastructure, our department, for different reporting methods. Do we have something that's built for this? My answer to that would be no. This would be a start from scratch, even within our infrastructure, to create that reporting process. Then in addition, you've got programming and development that goes along with that. And then on the backside, you've got just who's going to manage the data and what does it tell you, and how is this going to be potentially broken out proportionally as it relates to how much money is brought in. And I think it is, yes, we have a infrastructure or a framework, but we do not have this process online right now. It would take some development for sure.
Senator Duhamel.
Thank you. Question to you as well. Has the Game Fish and Parks looked at moving towards registering guides? Have you thought about that? Because it seems like there is an interest in doing that, but the devil's in the details, and maybe this isn't right, all the different requirements here, and maybe the criminal charge. But are you thinking about doing this? Are you moving in that direction?
Through the chair. Senator Duhamel, that's a bit of a tricky question, just based on the fact that the department and the commission does not have the authority to regulate guides. So are we looking into some information related to guides and how often they're used through our Creel survey process? I think it's fair to say that yes, we're starting to do that, but as far as development of regulation, doing work groups with guides, those kinds of things, we have not ventured into that arena, just again because we don't have the authority. No different than we haven't moved into the arena of addressing property taxes because that's not within our authority. So yes, we're starting to gather some information, but not
to give you authority, does that mean we have to have a bill that, like the first sentence, we give you authority, we want you to register, and then leave the details to GF&P? Is that how you get authority?
Through the chair. Senator Duhamel, yes, it would take legislative action in order for the commission to have the authority. Right now, the authority lies with the legislature, and if the legislature wants to abdicate that authority to the commission, that is the process that would need to be followed.
Any other questions from the committee? I'm formulating one. I don't see in the bill, I mean, I've always said the bills are the what, the who, when, where, and why. You tend to get promulgated in rules. That process, how long does that take normally to set up rules that it would take to enforce this?
Mr. Chair, that's pretty hypothetical. So I hesitate to give you a time frame that our rulemaking process is a drawn-out process. It gives ample opportunity for public comment. We oftentimes, leave rules out there for 60 days for people to comment on. So there's that logistics of rulemaking authority. But to get to the point where you actually put a rule forward, I mean, something that is this large, you're talking about input groups, working with different individuals. Sportsmen are going to want to have a say in it. Guides are going to want to have a say in it. Legislators are likely going to want to have a say in it. I mean, that is a process that we've seen in other arenas that do pertain to wildlife or fisheries that can sometimes take a year or more to even get to the point of bringing a rule forward. Again, that's just, I'm kind of hypothetically answering your question.
Thank you. Just kind of a follow-up on that. Is the bill itself detailed enough to enforce the way it is, or would we have to go through a rulemaking process?
Mr. Chair, I would say that the bill itself does not give us enough guidance to enforce. And I think that when, during my testimony, I talk about consideration. You've heard that several different times. I think until there is a definition of consideration, anything that moves forward from here is I don't know if it's impossible, but it's certainly in a gray area that we don't want to live in.
Okay, thank you. I'd ask the same question of this prime sponsor. Thank you.
I'm sorry, state your question again, Mr.
I'm
Chair.
just wondering if there's enough definition in the bill to be enforceable the way it is, or would we have to go through a rules-making process to fill in the detail? And I guess I asked how long that would take, but you probably don't know that. But do you feel like it's enforceable the way it is?
Well, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. There may be some problems with the bill. I think that maybe adding a definition for consideration, and then adding the definition of what I'm trying to say as a fishing guide, is probably appropriate. I think that we can certainly add that between now and the floor, or now in the next committee. I could certainly do that if we deferred, but I think that honestly that would be. I think it would be enforceable if we had those things defined.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Senator Voigt.
Thank you. If I could, is there any consideration here in terms of possible consequences of liability, in terms of a guide, whether it be a 12-year-old, if it's changed, or an 18-year-old, in terms of responsibilities?
Mr. Chair? Thank you for the question, Senator Voigt. I specifically did not delve into the liability issue with this bill. I know that's been a discussion in the past, but I feel like if we had a licensure system in place that the GFP was enforcing, then as a client, you could get a hold of that fishing guide that is licensed and ensure that they do have insurance. Right now, we don't know. It's basically the Wild West out there on the snow bears and on the boats. So I feel like having some type of licensure process in place would alleviate your concerns, in my opinion.
Hey, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Senator Davis.
One more for Game Fish and Parks. The bill talks about, or gives a very specific directive about stocking fish from where it came from. You kind of alluded to in your testimony that that's not necessarily how you guys operate. Could you elaborate or educate me a little bit more on how do you guys stock fish or decide where to go or how to do it or things like that?
Through the chair. Senator Davis, great question. Yeah, we have a stocking plan, right? We go out, we survey lakes, we see what's there, what's not there. We look at water levels, we look at history of stocking in that lake, we look at what the potential could be for that lake, and then we have a series of stockings planned over the coming years, right? There's definitely, it's intentional what we put, where we put, and why we put something in a lake. This does not address that. This just says that we need to proportionally stock some dollars towards a lake, and it would be mandated, right? It kind of takes that decision-making process out of our hands and says that you will go stock this specific lake with something, even if that is not within the maybe managerial guidelines that we've set out for that lake. We've got some very intelligent folks that manage our lakes and take great pride in how they manage that fishery, and I think that this starts to remove some of that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, we'll close questions and open up to committee action and/or discussion.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to make a motion to send Senate Bill 160 as amended to the 41st day.
We have a motion by Senator Davis to move Senate Bill 160C as amended to the 41st day. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Seconded by Senator Voigt. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the intention of the sponsor and some of the proponents is admirable. I guess where I'm landing is just the devil in the details, right? The definition of the guide, the criminal charge seems excessive. The reporting details seem excessive to me. The fish stocking directive seems problematic and goes against maybe what our, well, I can understand maybe why that would make sense on the surface. I think it takes away some of the comprehensive planning that our Game Fish and Parks is putting into proper lake management. And so for those reasons, I made the motion and just would encourage the sponsor and proponents to work with the opponents on a more kumbaya solution in the future.
Thank you. Any other comments on the motion?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Whip.
Thank you. Yeah, I think a good conversation has been started here, but we're a week out from crossover day, and one of the I'm not going to criticize our form of government because I think it's perfect, but we're more set up to have these conversations over the summertime and convene those meetings with all of the groups, right? Yeah, we have amendments on bills, but we also have almost 600 some bills before us, and I feel like it would just not be maybe the right way to approach this, to dive into this conversation now. A couple problems that come to my mind, and the reason I'll be supporting the motion. The body of water on which the guide services were provided. If I said I was out fishing on Mud Lake yesterday, would you have any clue where I was? I think there's probably like 200 bodies of water colloquially known as Mud Lake in the state. So there's one issue. The other, private waters. If I own a lake, the registration requirement excludes those waters, but not the restocking. So for $50, I could gain access to the state's restocking of fish on my private waters. I'm not sure that was your intent either, right? And so I'm guessing, by convening the right meetings with the right stakeholders and fleshing out the details, I think you can get this to a place where, again, I applaud the idea. I do think that since we sink so much money into our waters, that people that are making money off that, we should know how and where and things like that. But I just don't think it's quite ready yet, and that's why I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Any other comments on the motion? Senator Duhamel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do like the idea of a fishing guide requirement, and I think we should somehow give them authority, but I would like the game fish and parks to figure out the details and how they're going to do it. And I imagine it would be a complicated process, potentially over years, with a lot of input. I think right now the bill has some issues that would be hard to overcome, but I think it's a great idea.
Any other comments on the motion?
Sure, I'll make a few comments.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I appreciate the comments of you guys making too. I do believe, Senator Davis, that probably the language that I have in the restocking probably is too hard. It could be like a softer language there, like a consideration, because it does have to go into a bigger plan, right, of where the GFMP wants to restock. And so I understand that probably needs to be amended. The problem I have, though, is that the whispers I hear in the hallways is that the GFMP doesn't want to do this. And so that's why I kind of brought the bill. I think that we need to start making that direction that, hey, we need to start looking at this seriously and going down here and start that this needs to be done. Unfortunately, I'm an avid ice fisherman, and I like to go to the northeast part of the state to do that. And to me, it's a big issue in the Northeast. And so something needs to be done. I don't even know if it's such a big issue on the Missouri River with guiding there, but in the Northeast, the snow bears are really out right now. I'm sure they're out making a living on our lakes, and there's no replenishment of the natural resource. So I appreciate the conversation and all the comments that are made. And if a bill goes down, then maybe we'll try to make a bill better for next year, or hopefully GFMP takes it up and I don't have to do that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the motion? So Senator Davis moves to move Senate Bill 160C as amended to the 41st day, seconded by
Voigt.
Senator Voigt. Thank you. I'll ask the Secretary to call the roll. All those in favor say of the 41st day say aye. Opposed, nay.
Senators Davis,
Aye.
Duhamel,
Aye.
Marty,
No.
Voigt,
Aye.
Whiff,
Aye.
Jensen,
No.
Pischke,
I'll say no. Well,
Mr. Chair, we have 4 yeas and 3 nays.
Okay. Senate Bill 160C as amended will move to the 41st day. Thank you. So moving right along. We will now take, I got to bring it up on my screen here.
1019.
Yeah. House Bill 1019, revised provisions regarding pesticide laws. Good morning. Is there any proponent testimony?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Brian Walsh. I'm the Deputy Secretary, Department of Ag and Natural Resources, and I come before you today with House Bill 1019 and ask for you to support that bill. I'll start with the why behind this story. In 2024, over 18,000 acres of soybeans in South Dakota were damaged by a misbranded pesticide product, Compensia, made by Sharda USA. This product contained an active ingredient not listed on the label. DANR, as we do in these cases, completed an investigation, determined it was in fact misbranded, and the Secretary canceled the product registration. The company Sharda requested a hearing, claiming they did not knowingly and willfully distribute the misbranded product for sale. Ultimately, a hearing was not held because the company kind of disappeared and stopped communicating with Danner. Although the hearing did not occur, our legal counsel agreed the company's argument had merit and recommended DANR strengthen the law to ensure the Secretary, in extreme cases like this where we have an uncooperative product registrant, had clear defensible authority to cancel a registration without needing to prove intent, which is the current standard. So what this bill does, it revises Section 3828-13 to provide clear and defensible authority for the Secretary to cancel a product registration for an adulterated or misbranded pesticide without needing to prove intent. We still have to prove it. We just don't have to prove they did it on purpose. We did work with industry. This bill was amended on the House side. Our initial draft of this bill ultimately maybe went a little far and had made some potential unintended consequences for our ag retail dealers. We did not want that to happen. We worked with industry to keep this this change focused on the product registrants in the case when they're a bad actor. We think this is an important bill. It protects our producers, strengthens our regulatory enforcement on product manufacturers distributing adulterated and misbranded pesticides in South Dakota, and respectfully ask for your support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do we have any other proponent testimony? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. My name is Travis Schaefer, and I'm testifying on behalf of myself, the owner of Kona Ag Incorporated, a full-service ag retailer with locations in Oneida, Winter, and Pierre. In 2024, we sold soybean herbicide called Compensa, made by Sharda USA, which is an India-based company. We observed damage in many of the soybean fields that we scout for our farmers. And after weeks of investigation, we discovered that the Compensa herbicide, labeled by Sharda USA, contained the incorrect active ingredient. Instead of a soybean herbicide, which the label indicated, it contained a soil sterilant. We contacted our Sharda USA representative as soon as we were able to identify the problem with their product, and were given the runaround by Sharda USA and their insurance providers. To this day, nothing has been done by either Sharda USA nor their insurance providers to compensate these farmers for their losses, which is nearly $10 million. I support the bill and efforts to give the Department of Ag and Natural Resources the enforceable actions it needs to defensively cancel a product registration in situations like this. And I ask that you vote yes on this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other proponent testimony? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Liv Stavik, Executive Director and Registered Lobbyist for the South Dakota Agribusiness Association. We represent South Dakota's crop input supply chain from manufacturers and crop input registrants to the distributors and ag retailers that sell and apply those products. We support House Bill 1019 and certainly appreciate the efforts of the Department of Ag and Natural Resources to amend the bill in the House to its current form. The bill allows the department to act quickly when a pesticide or its labeling does not comply with law. Permitting cancellation based on a preponderance of evidence rather than requiring proof of willful or knowing misconduct ensures those products can be removed from the market as soon as possible. That protects farmers, applicators, and the public and upholds confidence in the regulatory system. We urge it do pass.
Any other proponent testimony? Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. My name's Brenda Foreman. I'm registered lobbyist and executive director for South Dakota Association of Cooperatives. And on behalf of my co-op members and our producer owners, we rise in support of House Bill 1019. 1019 will allow Danner to respond to registration violations regarding adulterated and misbranded products quickly, providing the protection, as was noted earlier, to both our producers and our retailers. On behalf of the association, we'd like to thank the department for working with us on some of our earlier concerns, and with that would ask for your favorable support on 1019 as amended. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other proponent testimony?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Rob Schonsberg. I'm from Fort Pierre, registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Soybean Association. I can tell you that I know Mr. Schaefer is a producer and a business owner, and I can also tell you he got a hold of me fairly soon after this happened. This caused a tremendous amount of stress on not just himself, but producers across the state. In the scheme of things, you don't see very many no-brainers. This is one of them. How this got 2 nay votes in the House, I have no idea, but you got an opportunity to do the right thing here. This is a good bill, and we support the proposal and ask you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponent testimony? I don't see that we have anyone online, pro or opponent. So if there's any other proponent testimony? Do we have any opponent testimony? Seeing none, no need for rebuttal, I guess. Open it up to committee questions. Okay, Okay, seeing no questions, we'll end testimony and move to committee action and/or discussion.
Chair.
Senator Pischke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, since I'm usually chair and I don't get to make motions, I'm going to make a motion of due pass.
Second.
So we have Senator Pischke moves due pass on 1019, seconded by Senator Whipf. Any discussion on your motion?
I agree with Mrs. Skonsberg. This is a no-brainer. I think we should move forward on consent.
All right, thank you. So with that, no other discussion. I'll ask the Secretary to call the roll on 1019. Those in favor say aye, opposed say nay. Secretary, call the roll, please.
Senators Davis.
Aye.
Duhamel.
Aye.
Marty.
Aye.
Voigt.
Aye.
With.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Pischke.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, we have 7 yeas and 0 nays.
Okay, with that, House Bill 1019 passes with affirmative vote. Unanimous, so is there any objection to putting this on consent? Seeing none, we'll certify this for consent. Now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Senator Voigt moves to adjourn, seconded by Senator, you're not fast enough, Senator Whip. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We are adjourned. Thank you.
SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder.